Chapter 2769. Conditions of Protection. Be careful, Kuan Tian. Feng Shui saw that and immediately flew over. She supported Jian Chen on the way back to the capital city. They remained quiet during the entire way back. For the entire time, Jian Chen acted like his head was splitting open, where his soul was clearly weakened. All Feng Shui did was look at Jian Chen in concern and worry. There were several times when she wanted to say something, but she would remember what Kuan Tian had just gone through earlier and would be afraid of affecting him again, thus causing him even further injury. If it was just injuries to the body, Feng Shui had countless methods to tackle them, but against injuries to the soul, even the Dark Star Emperor was helpless, let alone her. After returning to the capital city, Jian Chen and Feng Shui separated, bidding farewell to one another. Feng Shui said in concern to Jian Chen, "Kuan Tian, you must properly recuperate once you get back. I will mobilize everything the 10th Divine Hall has to offer to collect all rare treasures that are beneficial to the soul for you." As soon as he returned to the 5th Divine Hall, Jian Chen immediately entered seclusion, such that he completely adhered to his act of his feeble condition, giving nothing away. Feng Shui did not come to find Jian Chen anymore either. Just like what she had said, she immediately passed orders to gather all the heavenly resources beneficial to the soul that the Dark Star world had to offer as soon as she returned to the 10th Divine Hall. The 10 Divine Halls of the Dark Star race could be regarded as 10 peak organizations. Every single Divine Hall had its own forces. Although they did not possess as much authority as the ruler of the race, it was more than enough for them to gather some items. Just as Jian Chen remained in seclusion in order to keep up his act, the vice leader of the 5th Divine Hall, Bing Yuan, personally visited the 100 Saint City. In the very center of the 100 Saint City was a majestic Divine Hall. The name of the Divine Hall happened to be the Pantheon Divine Hall. The Pantheon Divine Hall was the only discussion hall within the 100 Saint City, because whenever the city faced any major issues, the members of the peak organizations who had built the city would all gather there for discussions. Today, all the representatives of the 100 Saint City gathered in the Pantheon Divine Hall, including the prodigies that had crossed through the two world mountains. As long as they were still alive, they were all there. This was because a vice hall leader of the 5th Divine Hall would be coming here in person to discuss something of extremely great significance and importance to the 100 Saint City, or in other words, their clans. All the prodigies treated this matter as something that could directly affect whether their clans could gain a foothold in the Dark Star world, so they all took it extremely seriously. Esteemed Vice Hall Master, you definitely know about the restrictions on entering the Dark Star world. Everything that we bring in cannot be at the God tier, or not only will they be destroyed, even the person carrying the items will end up dead. The entrance to the Dark Star world was personally created by the Grand Exalts of the Wood Spirits and the Dark Star race after all. Even 9th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes cannot contend against the power of these two Grand Exalts. None of our organizations even possess a 9th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime, so where are we supposed to get the power to break through the laws of these two Grand Exalts and bring in something beyond the limit against all odds? If it's truth tier pills, including precious pills for healing the soul, our Jade Pill sect can casually produce whole handfuls of them for you. However, once it surpasses the truth tier and reaches the God tier, there's really nothing we can do, because we can't bring them in no matter what. That's right. After all, the tunnel connected to this world is composed of laws set down by the two Grand Exalts. Even though the organizations behind us possess frightening capabilities in the Saints' world, even able to twist fate to a certain extent, our strongest ancestors can only stare on helplessly against the laws of Grand Exalts who have already become embodiments of the heavenly ways. The prodigies gathered there all spoke their minds. They were all at their wits' end with regard to Bing Yuan's request to bring in God tier pills or heavenly resources. There was nothing they could do. However, Bing Yuan just sat there, unfazed. He said indifferently, "The 100 Saint City itself has virtually reached the level of a medium-quality God artifact. You were actually able to construct something on par to a medium-quality God artifact here. So I think you'll definitely have a way to bring in those God tier pills and heavenly resources." Seeing how the prodigies wanted to object, Bing Yuan immediately raised his hand to silence them. "Don't speak just yet. Let me finish. I think you all know just how much prejudice the 7th Hall Master holds towards you. If it weren't for our Hall Master this time, none of you would still be alive. To your clans, your deaths might not hold any significance at all, but your clans better stop thinking about doing any further business in the Dark Star world too. Return and report to your clans that if any of you can provide God tier pills and heavenly resources to our 5th Divine Hall, best if they can recover memories, then our 5th Divine Hall will be responsible for protecting your clan. And, our 5th Divine Hall will give you priority over the various precious items our Dark Star world produces. On the other hand, if you can't provide these items, then you will have lost your only value. Our 5th Divine Hall obviously won't bear the risk of offending the 7th Divine Hall to protect a bunch of useless people. Do you understand? Towards the end, Bing Yuan's gaze sharpened, revealing his determination and resolve. It made everyone present understand that he was not just throwing empty threats around. If the 100 Saint City really was incapable of providing the 5th Divine Hall with what it needed, then the 5th Divine Hall would abandon the 100 Saint City without second thought. For a moment, all the prodigies gathered in the Pantheon Divine Hall sank into their thoughts. Their hearts all weighed extremely heavily, because they understood their relationship with the 7th Divine Hall had already reached a point of no return from the moment they reclaimed the city from Getty's hands. Now, Getty was more determined than ever to eliminate them. At such a dangerous time, they really would end up losing the city if they lost the protection of the 5th Divine Hall, which was bold enough to oppose Getty. Once they lost the city, it would be equivalent to losing the bit of foundation they had managed to establish in the Dark Star world after so much difficulty. It would be very difficult for their clans to collect the rare resources of the Dark Star world in the future. The loss would be tremendous. It could even stump the future development of their clans to a certain extent. Bing Yuan continued, "Our 5th Divine Hall will negotiate with the 7th Divine Hall so they can remove the seal on the teleportation formation. Afterwards, you can send people back and discuss this over with your clans. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters." Chapter 2770. The Pantheon Divine Hall. After Bing Yuan's departure, the Pantheon Divine Hall that had fallen silent immediately became noisy again. The prodigies all spoke, engaging in an intense discussion with one another. The topic of the discussion revolved around the God-tier pills and heavenly resources. The prodigies were all at their wits' end regarding Bing Yuan, no, the 5th Divine Hall's request. Although they had reclaimed the 100 Saint City now and the teleportation formation would be fixed soon, which would provide them with a path of retreat, they faced an even more severe problem instead, which was how they were supposed to protect their clan's business within the Dark Star world. Their clans had operated in the Dark Star world for countless years. After tremendous hardship, they had only managed to rope in a few Vice Hall Masters of the Dark Star world. For regular matters, they could just ask these Vice Hall Masters to resolve them. But against the 7th Hall Master Getty, these Vice Hall Masters would be mostly useless. As a result, obtaining the protection of the 5th Divine Hall was more important than ever to them. But due to the limitations of the passageway, they were unable to provide the 5th Divine Hall with what they required. Everyone, let's not discuss this for now. Clearly, this is not something we have the power to decide. Let's wait for the seal over the teleportation formation to be removed first, and we can send people back to our clans with the news, so our seniors can think about it, said a god king of the Hao family, Hao Chen. His Hao family clearly possessed extremely great prestige among this group of people from various peak organizations. Hearing Hao Chen, the noisy Pantheon Divine Hall immediately fell quieter. Brother Hao Chen's right. No matter how much we discuss, the matter's not up to us to decide on. Let's just disperse for now and hope we can leave the Dark Star world sooner. Very soon, everyone in the Pantheon Divine Hall dispersed and returned to their respective territories. In the 100 Saint City, every major organization had a special region that belonged to it, just like its own domain. He Qianqian returned to the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall that belonged to her Heavenly Crane clan. It was a supreme quality saint artifact and had now transformed to several hundred meters long, standing on the ground quietly. Even though it was not a god artifact, its presence was still extremely magnificent. As soon as she thought of the 5th Divine Hall's conditions for protection, He Qianqian felt extremely agitated inside. The Vice Hall Master of the 5th Divine Hall had said it very clearly. The 5th Divine Hall would be protecting whichever clan that could produce god-tier pills and heavenly resources for them. Born in the Heavenly Crane clan, He Qianqian understood exactly what her clan was capable of. The Heavenly Crane clan was very powerful as a peak clan in the Saints' world that had a grand prime. However, overcoming the restraints and bringing god-tier resources into the Dark Star world was beyond the clan's abilities. Let alone the Heavenly Crane clan, even those Archean clans that once produced grand exalts and still possessed terrifying strength did not have that ability. How could the laws set down by the grand exalts of the Wood Spirits and Dark Star race be broken so easily? As for the 100 Saint City, it was an exception, because the city was not originally a god artifact. It had been assembled from numerous supreme-quality saint artifacts using complicated formations. And the forging of the 100 Saint City had been personally completed by Grandmaster Artifact Smiths of the Saints' World. The Heavenly Crane clan had only been responsible for providing resources to build the city back then. What are we supposed to do? Without the protection of the 5th Divine Hall, our 100 Saint City won't be able to fend off the 7th Divine Hall. Once we lose all our business here, it'll impact the clan severely. Xueqi paced around the Divine Hall alone with her brows furrowed and her lips in a frown. As someone who understood the Heavenly Crane clan very well, she did not even want to send someone back to the clan with this information, because she knew her clan was incapable of resolving this matter. After a while of thought, Xueqi suddenly flipped her hand and a divine hall the size of a fist appeared. She stared at the divine hall and asked, "What's the situation with the people stationed near the Two World Mountains? Is there any news regarding Xueqi?" "Young miss, there still has been no news from the people near the Two World Mountains." The voice of an old man rang out from outside the door. Xueqi sighed gently inside. She stared at the divine hall and murmured, "Xueqi, the sliver of the power of your soul that you left in the divine hall is still intact, but why haven't you emerged from the Two World Mountains after all this time? Is it because the power of the soul is unable to guide you, so you've lost your way? Or have you already died in the Two World Mountains and the sliver of the power of your soul in the divine hall hasn't dispersed due to the special environment in the Two World Mountains?" At this moment, Jin Hong arrived at the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. Xueqi immediately went forth to receive him. She spoke extremely politely. Out of all these prodigies of the 100 Saint City, the person who shone the most would definitely be Jin Hong. Even when disregarding the fact that the Wolf Clan behind him was also a peak organization, just his identity as the successor of a Grand Exalt would earn him great respect. And before she had entered the Dark Star world, her seniors of the Heavenly Crane clan had reminded her time and time again to establish a good relationship with Jin Hong, and try her best to befriend the successor of a Grand Exalt who possessed a limitless future. Originally, Xueqi believed this would be a very difficult mission, but she never thought she would instead be the closest to Jin Hong due to Xueqi. Jin Hong did not talk for too long with Xueqi. The main reason for his visit was to ask about Xueqi. He showed even more care and concern for Xueqi than Xueqi. "Apologies, young Master Jin Hong. I haven't received any news regarding Xueqi so far. There's been no disturbances near the Two World Mountains either. It's even made me suspect that the sliver of the power of his soul is either useless, or he's already dead," Xueqi sighed gently. Jin Hong shook his head instead and said with absolute confidence, "No, I have a very strong feeling that Xueqi isn't dead. He's definitely still alive. I believe he can emerge from the Two World Mountains safely. Miss Qian, once you hear anything about Xueqi, you must contact me immediately." With that, Jin Hong turned around and left. The 100 Saint City gradually recovered its usual operations, but the formation over the city remained intact. Only a city gate had opened up. They had already restarted their trade of cultivation resources with cultivators of the Dark Star race. Pills from the outside world were extremely enticing to cultivators of the Dark Star world. The cultivation methods, battle skills and various heavenly resources from outside were all crucial for the cultivation of these members of the Dark Star race too. The various organizations in the city used these objects to exchange for items they needed from the Dark Star race. The alliance between these organizations was now close to falling apart, because they had already reclaimed the 100 Saint City, and the danger they faced had been temporarily resolved. In the following period of peace, they would temporarily cease to be allies and become competitors instead. Often, the various organizations would compete with their prices when something rare appeared. It would be extremely intense. Now, the organizations gathered in the 100 Saint City had basically become independent of each other. Only when they faced the great danger of the Dark Star race would they reunite as a single group. In the capital city far away from the 100 Saint City, within the hovering 7th Divine Hall. "Hallmaster, this is the situation. We're basically certain that the City Lord of Dark Knight City by Jean, along with the 36 lords and 108 kings have all died in the depths of the Two World Mountains, while the droplet of Divine Beast's essence blood in by Jin's possession had ended up in the hands of a regional king. We're not bold enough to disturb this king, so we silently retreated after precisely locating the droplet of essence blood," Vice Hall Master Duff reported below. He had yet to recover from his wounds, so his face was pale and he seemed slightly weakened. With that, Getty exhaled deeply on the throne. He seemed to be slightly stern as he said with a heavy heart, "Looks like what I'm worried about has happened in the end. The droplet of essence blood is extremely important, so we can't afford to lose it. Now that it has ended up in a regional king's possession, taking it back won't be easy." Getty massaged his temples. This matter gave him a huge headache. The two world mountains were a forbidden zone to the Dark Star race. Unless they had no other choice, members of their Dark Star race would never set foot in there, particularly in the depths. Even primordial realm experts like them had to be cautious when they entered there. It was possible to say that the two world mountains had been created by the Grand Exalt of the Wood Spirits. The Grand Exalt tampered with the ways and set down his own laws, which greatly suppressed all members of the Dark Star race. If first heavenly layer infinite primes entered there, their strength would be suppressed to just peak God King, and they would tire themselves out several times faster during battle, unable to recover or replenish their energy at all. All it required were a few God King life-devouring beasts, and they would be enough to kill an infinite prime of the Dark Star race. Most importantly, once an infinite prime of the Dark Star race exposed their presence in the two world mountains, it would spread endlessly like light from a bright lantern in darkness. All the primordial realm regional kings in the two world mountains would sense it clearly and then converge from all directions. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2771. Conditions of unsealing. The droplet of essence blood must be retrieved, Getty said powerlessly. The essence blood was just too important. It was something that could affect the fate of his entire race. Getty could not bear the consequences if it was not brought back. After all, he was in charge of this millennium. If the essence blood was lost during his rule, he would be held responsible. However, stealing the essence blood back from a regional king life-devouring beast was anything but easy. As a matter of fact, if he handled it badly, it was even possible for him, Getty, to die in the process. Hallmaster, should we report this to the Emperor? With the situation right now, we can only ask the Emperor to step in. If the Emperor leads the experts of our 10 divine halls into the two world mountains, we'll definitely be able to retrieve it, said Vice Hallmaster Duff. Getty shook his head. He was worried. It's not like you don't know the Emperor's currently undertaking something extremely important in seclusion right now. Disturbing the Emperor would truly be a horrible decision. Moreover, if the Emperor really does end up leading the 10 Hallmasters into the two world mountains, the other Hallmasters will definitely resent us for that. Getty dismissed the idea without hesitation. He was an expert who attached great importance to his pride. He would never want to do something so humiliating unless he truly ran out of choices. He did not want any more disputes with other Hallmasters. Otherwise, they would mercilessly label him as useless or trash when they sneered and mocked him. Hallmaster, an envoy of the 5th Divine Hall has come to visit. At this moment, a God King guard rushed in from outside and dropped down on one knee. An envoy of the 5th Divine Hall? Getty frowned and he immediately became fed up. He had never been on great terms with the 5th Divine Hall, holding resentment towards them. And this resentment had grown with the conflicts and matters that had arisen from how unreasonably their Hallmaster, Xueqi, had behaved after losing his memories. As a result, as soon as he heard that an envoy from the 5th Divine Hall had come to visit, he was tempted to order the guard to chase him away. But in the end, Getty chose not to do that, or he would probably be labeled as petty. He made a gesture for the guard to let the envoy in. The envoy sent by the 5th Divine Hall was a God King old man. He was well-groomed and there was a wise light to his eyes. Clearly, he was a capable person. Greetings to the 7th Hallmaster and the Vice Hallmasters from Wu Ming, the Master of External Affairs of the 5th Divine Hall. Wu Ming stuck to courtesy and bowed to them politely. Even though he knew his Hallmaster had always been on bad terms with Getty, he also knew the disputes was not something a mere God King like him could get involved in. If you have something to say, spit it out, and if you're done, scram. You people of the 5th Divine Hall have no right to be standing in my territory, Getty said impatiently. If it were not for the fact that people would end up talking behind his back, he really did not want to meet with the envoy of the 5th Divine Hall. Wu Ming remained extremely polite. He cut right to the chase. Esteemed 7th Hallmaster, I've come under the orders of my Hallmaster. My Hallmaster demands the 7th Divine Hall to remove the seals on the teleportation formation, and allow the outsiders to come and go freely. Wu Ming was already mentally prepared to weather the incoming storm from what he said. He felt powerless too. He did not want to be so blunt, but the fifth hall master had clearly ordered him to repeat exactly what he had said to Xueqi. As a result, he could only bite the bullet and do it. Just as expected, Xueqi's expression changed as soon as he heard that. His gaze became hostile instantly. His sharp gaze was like two pairs of swords, which made Wu Ming shiver all over. Xueqi erupted. What did you say? Demands? Kuan Tian's actually demanding this hall master? Xueqi was unable to repress his anger. He slammed his hand against the armrest of the throne heavily, and the tremendous force made the entire hall shake. He roared furiously. He's gone too far. Kuan Tian's gone too far. Does he really think he's above me now just because he's broken through to the sixth heavenly layer? He's far too haughty. He's not even taking me seriously. Guards, throw the envoy out for me. No, seal his cultivation and directly throw him off the divine hall. Make him lay on the streets of the capital city below helplessly. Kuan Tian, I've put up with you so many times already. Does you really think I'm afraid of you, to actually demand more and more from me? Xueqi's face had darkened as his anger blazed inside. He was unable to calm down for quite a long while. Hold on, Hall Master. I have an idea, but I don't know if it'll work. The Vice Hall Master Duff said, doesn't the fifth divine hall want the Hall Master to remove the seals over the teleportation formation? The Hall Master can use this opportunity to request the fifth divine hall to retrieve the item in the two world mountains for us, as a condition for unsealing the teleportation formation. Hearing that, Xueqi was slightly taken aback despite fuming just earlier. In the next moment, his anger subsided completely and glee filled his face. He clapped his hands violently and his eyes lit up. All right. That's an extremely good idea. We'll go with that. Afterwards, Xueqi immediately stated his condition and sent Wu Ming back. In the fifth divine hall, Jian Chen sat boldly on the hallmaster's throne as Bing Yuan, Taro and Dou Wujin stood beside each other below him. Behind them, kneeling on the ground was the Master of External Affairs, Wu Ming. Wu Ming had already reported Xueqi's conditions to Jian Chen word for word. Before Jian Chen could say anything, Bing Yuan already began to sneer. Xueqi sure is thoughtful. He's lost the essence blood during his reign, so their seventh divine hall should have been responsible for retrieving it. Yet, it turns out that Xueqi's afraid of dying and he's too scared to retrieve something from the possession of a regional king life-devouring beast. So he wants our fifth divine hall to handle it instead. Does he really take our fifth divine hall to be fools? While Taro and Dou Wujin remained silent, both of them sneered as well. They mocked Xueqi's foolishness for trying to get their fifth divine hall to undertake such a great risk over something as insignificant as unsealing a teleportation formation. If this was not foolishness, what was it then? Jian Chen sat on the throne calmly and silently. He did not decline immediately. Instead, thoughts flashed through his eyes. Who knew what he was thinking about? Wu Ming, you can go. You can ignore the seventh divine hall's request. Bing Yuan waved his hand to dismiss Wu Ming. There was no need for any more discussions on this. All of them knew exactly what risk the two world mountains entailed. Hold on, Wu Ming. You can tell the seventh divine hall that I'll agree to their condition. However, they must immediately unseal the teleportation formation, Jian Chen said suddenly. Bing Yuan, Taro and Dou Wujin all leapt in fright. Their expressions changed drastically and said in a hurry, Hall Master, you mustn't go through with this. The dangers of the two world mountains are unimaginable. Apart from the Emperor, any primordial realm expert of our race, including the Hall Masters of the 10 divine halls, face the risk of dying if they set foot in there. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2772. Returning to the Two World Mountains. 1. Bing Yuan, Taro and Dou Wujin all did their best to convince Jian Chen otherwise. They all thought their hall master had lost his memories, completely forgetting about the dangers of the Two World Mountains, so they explained just how dangerous and just how terrifying the mountains were in detail to Jian Chen. Basically, all their descriptions clearly disclosed a single piece of information. As long as they were a member of the Dark Star race, Their lives would be in danger if they entered the two world mountains, even if they possessed great strength at the sixth heavenly layer of infinite prime. As a matter of fact, anyone from the Dark Star race who entered the two world mountains had a chance to die, apart from the Dark Star Emperor. The 10 Hall Masters were no exceptions either. Listening to the Vice Hall Masters describe just how terrifying the two world mountains were, Jian Chen was secretly surprised. He knew the two world mountains could suppress the Dark Star race, but he never thought the suppression would be so powerful, enough for primordial realm experts to pale in fright. However, Jian Chen had already made up his mind about venturing to the two world mountains. No one could change that. That was because Qian and the others had already reclaimed the 100 Saint City. He had wanted to check on the situation since a very long time ago. Just as he was troubled over the lack of an appropriate opportunity, he never expected Getty would instead provide him the chance. With that, he could use going to the two world mountains to retrieve the essence blood as an excuse to shed his identity, which was a perfectly reasonable excuse to make Tian vanish for a while. He was basically deceiving everyone flawlessly. As for retrieving the essence blood of the divine beast, Jian Chen knew that even if he refused to do so, the Dark Star race would still bring it back regardless of the cost. After all, the Dark Star Emperor was an expert with battle prowess on par to chaotic primes. Jian Chen met many chaotic primes in the Saints' world, so he knew just too well just how terrifying their battle prowess was. A tremendous difference definitely existed between chaotic primes and infinite primes. With the Dark Star Emperor's strength, he might not have been enough to unleash a massacre in the two world mountains, but retrieving a single droplet of essence blood would be just too easy. However, Jian Chen also bore in mind that he was a Hall Master with a lofty status. If he risked his own life to venture into the two world mountains just to undo the seal for the outsiders, it would seem slightly illogical in everyone's eyes. As a result, he needed another reason if he wanted to enter the two world mountains. He sat silently on the Hall Master's throne in thought for a while before saying, "Actually, the reason why I've decided to enter the two world mountains is not just because of Getty's condition. When I broke through in the land of soul destruction, I seem to have unwittingly fused with a fraction of the memories from the planetary beast." "What? Hall Master, you've gained some of the planetary beast's memories?" Bing Yuan, Taro and Do Wujin immediately became shocked. They stared at Jian Chen with widened eyes as surprise, disbelief and joy flooded their faces. Among the Dark Star race, there had always been a legend where it was possible to obtain memory fragments left behind by the planetary beast in the land of soul destruction. Unfortunately, the ancient records only listed a small handful of people who had actually managed to obtain the memory fragments in the lengthy history of the Dark Star race. However, without any exception, it was a tremendous fortuitous encounter for every single one of them who managed to obtain the memory fragments while still being able to cultivate normally. Of course, there were even more people who emerged from the land of soul destruction in a deranged state, blabbering nonsense. Perhaps a small fraction of these people had obtained something along the lines of the planetary beast's memories, but their souls were a mess and they had lost their minds. They were crippled for the rest of their lives and were no longer normal people. There's always been a rumor among our 10 divine halls that the reason why our emperor cultivates so quickly and is so terrifying in battle is because he also obtained memory fragments of the planetary beast when he cultivated in the land of soul destruction in the past. Bing Yuan murmured as his eyes shone brighter and brighter. The Dark Star Emperor had obtained memory fragments of the planetary beast in the land of soul destruction, while his Hall Master had obtained the same thing now. He knew exactly what this meant for their 5th divine hall. "I only absorbed a bit of the planetary beast's memory fragments. These fragments are very disorderly and very powerful too. They've been constantly affecting me. There have been many times when I've become uncertain about who I am under the influence of these fragments, but I just have a feeling that the information in the fragments are related to the two world mountains. As a result, I must pay a visit to the two world mountains," Jian Chen said while in thought. This time, the 3 Vice Hall Masters all remained silent. They looked at one another. They wanted to stop him, but they were unable to say anything now that this was related to the memory fragments of the planetary beast and a potential fortuitous encounter for their Hall Master. Jian Chen continued, "If I've guessed correctly, then my strength should increase once I emerge from the two world mountains, and this increase should be very large. By then, it shouldn't be an issue for me to overwhelm Getty by force." "Really? That's fantastic. Hall Master, the two world mountains is basically a land of fortune made for you. The two world mountains are worth visiting then." As soon as they heard how he could potentially overwhelm Getty, Bing Yuan, Taro and Do Wujin were all overjoyed. They went from their initial objection to completely supporting his decision now. If their hallmaster could really overwhelm Getty, then the status of their 5th divine hall would immediately shoot up among the 10 divine halls. As vice hallmasters, they would be able to hold their heads and chests even higher too. You can all go. I'll prepare a little and set off for the 2 world mountains tomorrow morning. In the morning on the next day, Jian Chen gave detailed orders to Bing Yuan regarding the matters of the 100 Saint City, and strictly ordered the 3 vice hallmasters to not become involved in any internal struggles of the 100 Saint City. Afterwards, he left the 5th divine hall and ventured to the 2 world mountains. Before he departed, he left the space ring with the droplet of the divine beast's essence blood in the 5th divine hall. He knew the essence blood had been contaminated with the aura of the Dark Star race, so from a certain perspective, it was possible to say that it had developed an obscure connection with the world which the Dark Star race resided in. If he took it with him, he could be discovered by the Dark Star race through secret techniques no matter how he hid himself, which would instead increase his risks of exposure. With a flash of the 5th divine hall's teleportation formation, Jian Chen vanished from there. Only the 3 vice hallmasters remained outside, having sent him off. Let's go back. Remember to keep the hallmaster's journey to the 2 world mountains a secret. After sending off Jian Chen, the 3 vice hallmasters returned to the divine hall too. However, what they failed to realize was that a guard posted beside the teleportation formation of the 8th divine hall nearby had been glancing over, perhaps by design. When Jian Chen vanished from the teleportation formation and the 3 vice hallmasters had returned to the divine hall, the guard immediately left his post, entering the 8th divine hall to find the hallmaster San Ran. Hallmaster, the 5th hallmaster has left alone, with his destination unknown. The 8th hallmaster, San Ran, who sat on his throne with his legs crossed slowly opened his eyes. He glanced in the direction of the 5th divine hall and waved his hand, dismissing the guard. After the guard had departed, the light in San Ran's eyes wavered. He murmured, there had all been reasons for Kuan Tian's departures from the 5th divine hall in the past few times, but he's left with no clear reason this time. Where is he going? To do what? Or should I say, the situation is really like what I suspected and Kuan Tian's obtained a fortuitous encounter in the land of soul destruction? If that really is the case, there's definitely a purpose for his departure this time. Eagerness appeared in San Ran's gaze, along with some well-disguised excitement. After monitoring him for so long, he's finally begun to move. Immediately investigate where Kuan Tian had teleported to. Remember to keep it a secret. We can't let anyone find out. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2773, Returning to the 2 World Mountains, 2. The Dark Knight City was the closest to the 2 World Mountains out of the 36 major cities of the Dark Star world. The Dark Knight City had already recovered its former prosperity and liveliness now. The destruction caused by the startling battle earlier had already been completely repaired under the combined efforts of the cultivators of the Dark Star race. However, all the traces of age and aura left behind by time had vanished from the places that had been repaired. Everywhere gave off a shiny new luster. People flowed to and fro within the Dark Knight City. Members of the Dark Star race mingled with the outsiders as business and transactions unfolded in an orderly manner. It seemed like the battle had never happened in the first place. The only difference was that the position of City Lord remained empty, while the positions of the 36 lords and 108 kings that served as the protector gods of the city had yet to be completely filled either. At the same time, there were still a lot of people discussing the recent, devastating battle with great interest in the various streets and alleyways, restaurants and inns in the city. However, most of the people who listened in were outsiders. Whenever they heard any information regarding the battle or an outsider called Xueqi, their ears would prick up and they would listen carefully, as if they were afraid of missing even the slightest detail. Most of these outsiders had been sent over from the 100 Saint City. They only had a single mission, which was to do all that they could to gather information about Xueqi throughout the entire Darkstar world, even including the 2 World Mountains. The major organizations of the 100 Saint City had already heard about Xueqi's battle in the Dark Knight City. Now that the 100 Saint City was temporarily safe, these organizations all secretly sent out people to look for Xueqi as they had nothing better to do. Xueqi was an expert with devastating battle prowess. All of these clans were interested in roping in a person like him. There's so many people looking for me from the 100 Saint City? Though I don't plan on using the identity of Xueqi anymore, so it'll only be strange if they do find me. Jian Chen maintained his appearance of Kuan Tian on the streets of the Dark Night City. However, he concealed all of his presence, strolling idly through the streets. No one recognized him. After all, the honorable appearance of the Fifth Hall Master was not something regular cultivators could see. Coupled with the fact that his presence was concealed, he was completely inconspicuous within the crowd. This was even easier for him to be forgotten. After all, Kuan Tian's appearance was not particularly special. The senses of his soul had already enveloped the entire city. He could see everything going on here, including the secret conversations between the cultivators from the 100 Saint City. Even those could not escape his powerful senses. I remember when I first came to Dark Night City, I was still an outsider with a fake name. I even encountered difficulty trying to enter the city. Now, I've become one of the 10 lofty hall masters of the entire Dark Star race. You really can't be certain over what can end up happening. As he strolled through the streets, Jian Chen felt amazed inside. He was not in a hurry to enter the Two World Mountains. Instead, he strolled through the wide streets of the city at a steady pace, making a beeline for the city gates. Ever since he had arrived in the Dark Star world, he really had not spent the time to properly appreciate the customs and culture of this foreign land. Only when he arrived at the newly built city gates did Jian Chen set his thoughts aside. He shot off into the sky, directly flying towards the Two World Mountains. Soon after he had left, within the 8th Divine Hall in the capital city. Hallmaster, we've already looked into it. The 5th Hall Master teleported to the Dark Night City. The Dark Night City, is it? I understand. You're dismissed. The 8th Hall Master, Sen Ren, slowly stood up from the throne. He paced around before the throne as the light in his eyes flickered rapidly. He was thinking of something. A while later, he seemed to make up his mind. He suddenly walked out of the 8th Divine Hall, before venturing to the Dark Night City through the teleportation formation 2. The Two World Mountains were shrouded in a gray mist all year round. Standing outside, it was impossible to make out the mountain range's true appearance, which added a hint of mystery to the place. Cultivators constantly flowed in and out of the mountains. They basically formed small groups of 3s and 5s. Rarely did anyone travel alone. Without any exception, all of these cultivators were outsiders. As for cultivators of the Dark Star race, they would never set foot in the Two World Mountains unless they had no other option. The Dark Star race's demand for the corpses of life-devouring beasts has been growing recently. The price they offer is 2 or 3 times higher than before too. I wonder why they need so many corpses. Life-devouring beasts are rather good sources of food. The inns within the various cities of the Dark Star race have all been purchasing them. The prices of food made using life-devouring beasts is absolutely absurd. There aren't a lot of people who can actually afford them, so even under normal circumstances, there's quite a surplus. But the Dark Star race is now purchasing all of it recklessly at such a high price. Have you realized that more and more people have been entering the Two World Mountains recently? I don't think the Dark Star race is purchasing so many corpses for something as simple as food. Or should I say, he's learnt some secret about the Two World Mountains through the memories of the planetary beast he obtained in the Land of Soul Destruction? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2774. Confronted calmly, San Ran hesitated for a while outside the Two World Mountains. He was rather uncertain about entering the Two World Mountains. But in the end, he still bit the bullet and rushed in boldly. Afterwards, he used his secret technique to sense the direction that Jian Chen had traveled off in. He tailed behind him carefully. San Ran was clearly extremely fearful of the Two World Mountains. Even a Hallmaster, a 5th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime like him, had to be extremely cautious and careful in the outskirts of the Two World Mountains. And he even used a secret technique to erase all of his presence. He would tread lightly as he moved through the forest and mountains, afraid of creating any disturbance that would alarm the nearby life-devouring beasts. He had to do everything that he could to avoid any battles within the Two World Mountains. If he fought, it was possible for his presence to leak out. Even if only a tiny sliver leaked out, it would be infinitely magnified by the special environment of the Two World Mountains. In the end, all the regional king life-devouring beasts in the Two World Mountains would discover him and eventually surround him from all directions. By then, even if he was in the outskirts, the regional king life-devouring beasts would still pursue him relentlessly. This damned Two World Mountains and the damned ancestor of the wood spirits. As Senran advanced carefully, he cursed inside. To think that a mighty hall master like him, who possessed such an honorable status within the Dark Star race, would have to resort to something like sneaking around. Clearly, this was extremely insulting to someone like him who dwelled at the top most of the time. Kuan Tian, I've had to make a compromise and enter the Two World Mountains because of you. You have to give me a good surprise. Senran was still a primordial realm expert after all. Even though he concealed his presence and treaded lightly, he still moved extremely quickly. Before long, he had passed through the outskirts and entered the depths of the Two World Mountains. Immediately, a powerful restrictive force exerted itself on Senran, passing through his body and ignoring all protective items, marking him deeply like a brand. He was unable to escape from it no matter what. Senran immediately felt that circulating the energy in his body became even more tedious. The attacks he could usually launch without much effort now took several times the energy, and his energy depleted much faster now. It was not just his cultivation. Even his soul suffered from the same restriction. He felt like his soul was now covered in shackles. Not only would it be much more arduous whenever he used his soul, but the power of his soul would also be depleted several times or even dozens of times faster than usual. The suppression from the depths were several dozen times more severe than the outskirts. If God Kings of the Dark Star race entered the depths, the suppression they suffered would also be extremely severe, but it would not be as terrifying as what Senran experienced right now. Once primordial realm experts set foot in here, the suppression would be startlingly powerful. Senran was originally a 5th heavenly layer infinite prime, but now, he had been forcefully suppressed to the strength of the 2nd heavenly layer. Kuan Tian is actually venturing even further still. Just where is he going? Behind, Senran used some unknown special secret technique to track Jian Chen's location as he felt excited inside. The Two World Mountains were a forbidden zone to cultivators of the Dark Star race. In particular, the depths were a forbidden zone that even primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race were reluctant to set foot in. Yet, not only had Kuan Tian entered the depths, but he was even rapidly approaching the central region, which immediately made Senran feel surprised and delighted, feeling like he had discovered some great secret. However, Senran failed to sense the changes that occurred when he entered the depths. When the various aspects of his abilities became severely restricted, the indiscernible senses of a soul extended over carefully from the depths, catching all of his actions. The senses of the soul were extremely powerful, and it was slightly different from regular senses too. At the same time, it was of higher quality compared to the senses of souls of most infinite primes, and it was purposefully hidden. Under these various factors, Senran failed to sense the existence of the senses of the soul. He continued with the actions that he believed were extremely well hidden and could not be sensed by any person or life-devouring beast as he passed through the thick mist silently. His body had become translucent as well. He basically seemed like a ghost. Several hundred kilometers ahead of Senran, Jian Chen stood atop a large tree, also with his presence erased. He raised his head and glanced in the direction that he had come in. His eyes shone with a strange light as he murmured, "I never thought I'd be tailed just for visiting the Two World Mountains, and the person tailing me is the master of a hall. Has he already developed doubts towards my identity?" Jian Chen carefully recalled everything he had gone through recently within the Dark Star race before shaking his head in the end. He dismissed the possibility that he had given himself away. There hasn't been any issues in my actions within the Dark Star race. Even if there is, the 3 Vice Hall Masters of the 5th Divine Hall and Feng Shui of the 10th Divine Hall should sense it first, as they've always been the people closest to Kuan Tian. If even they have not sensed anything, then it's impossible for Hall Master Senran, who barely interacts with Kuan Tian at all, to notice anything odd. Since there's nothing wrong with my identity, then Senran must be tailing me for some other reason. At this moment, Jian Chen suddenly recalled how Senran had tried to test him using an extremely discreet method when he first met Senran in Kuan Tian's disguise. He immediately came to an understanding. It looks like Kuan Tian, or perhaps I, possesses something that interests Senran. Reaching there, Jian Chen suddenly sneered. At that moment, a sharp light flashed through his eyes swiftly. He has come at the perfect time. I just happened to be worrying over the lack of opportunities to weaken the Dark Star race. Yet Sun Ran has presented me with an opportunity himself. I've already killed one of the Hallmasters, so let's kill another one today. With a flash, Jian Chen left the treetop and continued to fly deeper into the Two-World Mountains. Along the way, he did not alarm any life-devouring beasts at all. He flew extremely quickly. Behind, Sun Ran followed Jian Chen carefully. He used a special secret technique of the Dark Star race to cover his tracks, which was why he had not alarmed any life-devouring beasts either. He moved quite quickly too. Before long, the two of them had already ventured 10 million kilometers into the Two-World Mountains. They were extremely close to the central region now. That's strange. Why have his tracks vanished here? At this moment, Sun Ran stopped. He scanned around in doubt. Soon afterwards, he closed his eyes and began to use the secret technique as hard as he could to sense for Jian Chen. A while later, he seemed to find something. His expression changed drastically as he immediately raised his head to look at the sky. A blurry figure vaguely hovered in the sky shrouded by thick, gray mist. He faded in and out, as if he had already become part of the surrounding environment. It was impossible to discover his existence without actively looking for him. Kuan Tian. Sun Ran uttered Kuan Tian's name in a rather tongue-tied manner. He knew he had been discovered. Right now, hidden in the mist, Kuan Tian was staring right at him calmly. The only thing that surprised him was that not only did Kuan Tian give off no presence at all right now, but the space there was empty too when he scanned it with the senses of his soul. He could only see him with his eyes. If it were not for the fact that his secret technique could sense Kuan Tian's location, he probably would have missed Kuan Tian altogether with how he seemed to be fused with the mist right now. Exposed, Sun Ran did not feel awkward at all. He composed himself very quickly and smiled. Kuan Tian, since when did you grasp such a powerful concealing technique? You've even managed to elude me. Jian Chen drifted down slowly from the air. He hovered before Sun Ran as he looked at him in a rather strange manner. When I've grasped the concealing technique is not important. What is important is another question instead. Why are you here? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2775. Jian Chen strikes under Jian Chen's gaze. Sun Ran immediately felt uneasy, as the gaze made him seem like he was looking at a dead person. This made Sun Ran extremely uncomfortable. Of course, he definitely did not believe he was no different from a dead man in Jian Chen's eyes right now. He still believed that the one standing before him was the fifth Hall Master. It was just that Kuan Tian had lost his memories, which was why he seemed a little strange from time to time. Killing one another was forbidden in their Dark Star race, let alone figures as lofty as the 10 Hall Masters. Kuan Tian, you must know that the City Lord of the Dark Knight City by Jin has already died in the Two-World Mountains, so the droplet of essence blood allocated to him has ended up here too. I've obviously come here to retrieve the droplet of essence blood. After all, it ties into the fate of our entire race, Sun Ran said with composure. He really was unable to stand Jian Chen's gaze, so he turned his head and purposefully avoided it, acting like he was observing the surroundings. Oh, so you've actually come for the droplet of essence blood. Jian Chen smiled in a pondering manner. He said, but the essence blood hasn't fallen here. You're traveling in the opposite direction of the essence blood right now. Sun Ran was unflustered. Clearly, he was rather unfazed. He explained, I originally entered the Two-World Mountains for the essence blood, but I discovered your traces soon after I entered here. Out of curiosity, I followed you here. Hallmaster Sin, do you really think I'm as easy to fool as a kid? I don't have time to listen to your excuses. Tell me, why have you been tailing me? And how did you find my tracks? Sun Ran was helpless. He wanted to continue quibbling. Kuan Tian, I don't care whether you believe me or not. I really... Jian Chen ran out of patience. He interrupted Sun Ran violently and growled. Cut the bullshit tea. Ever since I lost my memory, I've become quite short-tempered. It's very easy for me to act rashly. This is the Two-World Mountains. Sun Ran, I hope you don't end up forcing me to attack you, or once I alarm those regional king life-devouring beasts, I might be fine, but it'll be difficult to say for you. With that, Sun Ran's expression immediately changed. He did not doubt Xueqi at all. Recently, Xueqi had embroiled in a great battle with the 7th Hallmaster, Xueqi, over some petty matters. He had even received reliable news that Xueqi had actually declared madly that he would never spare Xueqi if he touched the unimportant outsiders in the 100 Saint City. This matter was no secret among the 10 divine halls. At the same time, it allowed the upper echelon of the Darkstar race to understand something, which was Xueqi really was capable of doing anything once he lost his temper in his current state of memory loss. This might have been the 2 World Mountains, where Xueqi could alarm all the regional king life-devouring beasts as long as he leaked even a sliver of his presence. But Senran understood that Xueqi was actually bold enough to do that. Xueqi has already reached the 6th heavenly layer. Even under the suppression of the 2 World Mountains, he's still stronger than me. If he actually lures over the regional king life-devouring beasts, I'll be the one to suffer. I might not even be able to escape from the 2 World Mountains. Senran was troubled inside. Before him, Jian Chen saw how Senran remained silent. He had already begun to lose his patience, and his presence had already begun to radiate from his body slightly. His gaze turned into a glare too. Senran was alarmed. He immediately cried out, "Stop, Xueqi! Stop this foolish act. I'll tell you everything." Jian Chen immediately withdrew his presence. He said nothing more, just staring at Senran coldly. Senran came clean and told him the truth. "Xueqi, your strength increased so much after you broke through in the land of soul destruction, so I suspected you must have obtained some kind of fortuitous encounter there. You entered the 2 World Mountains for no good reason this time, so I thought it was extremely likely that it had something to do with your fortuitous encounter from the land of soul destruction. Perhaps you had obtained some memories of the planetary beast, and you had only come here despite the dangers under the guidance of the memories. I was curious, which was why I risked my life to see what was going on with you. I hid so well along the way, so just how did you find my traces?" Jian Chen asked again. He had to get to the bottom of this. After all, he had been to the capital city before and had come in contact with many hall masters. If the Darkstar race possessed some mysterious method to plant some kind of imprint on a person without them knowing, then the Darkstar race would be able to discover his true identity once he resumed his identity as Jian Chen. If that really did happen, then all of his hard work and the disguises he had undertaken recently would go to waste. This is because I've also entered the land of soul destruction, and I also had a bit of a fortuitous encounter there. I learnt a secret technique from a small fragment of the planetary beast's memories. I can track anyone who has entered the land of soul destruction with this secret technique. Of course, this doesn't last for too long either. Once it exceeds 10 millennia, the presence that the person has become contaminated with when they entered the land of soul destruction will vanish. Once this presence is gone, I can't use my secret technique on the person anymore, Senran answered. Is there anyone else who has grasped this secret technique apart from you? There isn't. Actually, only a handful of people have managed to obtain a fortuitous encounter in the land of soul destruction. Among our race right now, probably only the Emperor and us have benefited from there. It's just a pity that what I've gained is basically useless. Senran said in pity, I've already shared my secret with you. Xueqi, it's time for you to share your secret. Just what did you obtain from the land of soul destruction? And why have you come to the 2 World Mountains? Jian Chen sneered. Since you want to know so much, I'll let you know. With that, Jian Chen directly launched a palm strike. Energy surged out of his hand as violently as a tidal wave. It hurtled towards Senran with terrifying power at the 6th heavenly layer. At the same time, his presence erupted in an earth-shaking manner, causing the thick mist in the depths of the 2 World Mountains to churn violently, like a dragon making the seas churn. Under the effects of the mask, his presence had been disguised as the presence of the Darkstar race. The presence of the Darkstar race clearly received special treatment in the 2 World Mountains. As soon as Jian Chen's presence appeared, it was propelled by a mysterious power in the mountains, spreading in all directions at an unbelievable speed. It reached every corner of the mountains in a single instant. Roar! Growl! Immediately, tremendous roars of beasts rang out from all directions in the depths of the 2 World Mountains. They were thunderous, and the voices possessed a pressure special to primordial realm experts. There were several dozen of them. With the leaking of a Darkstar race primordial realm expert's presence, all the primordial realm life-devouring beasts lurking in the various regions of the 2 World Mountains had been directly alarmed. They behaved like they had found their public enemy, like the moment for them to carry out their orders had arrived. At that moment, all the primordial realm experts set off, casting their territorial behavior aside and rushing in from all directions hungrily. At the same time, Jian Chen's palm strike landed on Sen Ran's chest. With Sen Ran's cultivation at the 5th heavenly layer, he was not Jian Chen's opponent even at his peak condition, let alone now, when his strength had been firmly suppressed by the 2 world mountains. He was even less of an opponent. With a grunt, Sen Ran was knocked away as he spurted blood. His face paled as half of his chest had been reduced to a bloody mess. He laid on the ground powerlessly for quite a while, unable to get up. Coughing with blood, Sen Ran stared straight at Jian Chen. His face was filled with disbelief and confusion as he stuttered. Kuan-Tian why are you doing this? And your strength. Your strength actually isn't affected by the 2 world mountains. This is impossible. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2776, Sen Ran's Death, 1. Suddenly, Sen Ran seemed to understand something. His eyes immediately widened as he stared at Kuan-Tian before him in disbelief. His heart churned. I understand now. Why, you're not Kuan-Tian at all. Who are you exactly? Who? As he said that, Sen Ran's shock and disbelief reached a startling level. At the same time, he experienced deep fear. The fear was so heavy that it made his soul shudder. It made his entire body tremble uncontrollably. He had already realized that if the Kuan-Tian before him was an imposter, the imposter would definitely be an outsider. And any outsider older than 1,000 years could not pass through the passageway between the 2 worlds and step foot into the Dark Star world. However, the outsider who was pretending to be Kuan-Tian was a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime through and through. As a matter of fact, his battle prowess was even much greater than those who had just broken through to the 6th heavenly layer. What did this mean? It meant that the outside world had produced a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime less than 1,000 years old. And this expert managed to slip into their Dark Star world silently and infiltrate their upper echelon, becoming the mighty master of a hall in possession of great authority. This was simply too terrifying, so terrifying that Sen Ran's fear reached an unprecedented level. You're pretty clever, aren't you? You've seen through my disguise so quickly. Jian Chen's lips curled into a mysterious smile as he said, Sen Ran, do you remember that outsider who made a mess out of Dark Knight City recently? Sen Ran's eyes widened completely. He said in utter shock, so you're that outsider called Xueqi. Why you? Sen Ran had become so shocked that he was speechless. However, he did understand that such a powerful outsider scheming and infiltrating the upper echelon of the Dark Star race was definitely hiding a startling, unspeakable secret. Suddenly, the great ceremony that the Dark Star race was about to hold that could determine the fate of the entire race flashed through his mind. He immediately became extremely nervous. I can't die here. I cannot die here. I have to return. I have to escape from here with everything I have and report this startling piece of news to the Emperor. Sen Ran's eyes immediately became crazed. His life force depleted at an extremely terrifying rate. Not only was his life force being burned away, but even his vital energies had been ignited. He was using a secret technique at the cost of his life. You want to run? Sen Ran, do you still think I'll let you leave here alive now that you know my greatest secret? Jian Chen sneered. He kicked Sen Ran's head, sending him flying from the tremendous force. Sen Ran's soul was heavily shaken up. He felt his head spin as his soul shuddered uncontrollably, as if it was about to crack into pieces. The fleeing secret technique he was preparing to use had been forcefully interrupted. Around him, the thunderous roars of beasts sounded out constantly as the presence of the primordial realm flooded the entire place. Over 40 life-devouring beasts were converging from all directions. They moved extremely quickly. Among them, the fastest one was only a few hundred kilometers away from them. This distance seemed to be quite large, but to a primordial realm life-devouring beast, it would take less than a minute to cover. This was an avian that flew rapidly through the air. It was impossible to describe just what kind of creature it was. It had the head of a huge hawk and the body of a leopard, with 2 pairs of wings on its back, one large and one small. Its wings were riddled with beautiful and fascinating patterns, like the wings of a butterfly. As the 2 pairs of wings fluttered, it kicked up a great gale in the air, causing the mist to surge. It even formed blades of wind that shot off in all directions with incredible sharpness. Many towering trees below had been cut to pieces. The many life-devouring beasts thriving in the mountains and forests all collapsed on the ground, trembling. Behind this strange avian, the ground shook violently and rhythmically. In the mist behind, a colossal figure standing over 300 meters tall could be vaguely made out, running along the ground. It was impossible to imagine just how heavy it was. With each step, the ground would shake, and the mountains would totter. As it ran along, it collided against everything that blocked its way. Countless trees and boulders were reduced to fragments, as if even the endless mist there would be dispersed by its terrifying power when it made contact against its colossal body. This was a huge primordial realm life-devouring beast. It was truly unstoppable. Wherever it passed by, it would leave behind an empty hole in the mist and environment. It rushed off in Jian Chen's direction, tearing through everything. These 2 primordial realm life-devouring beasts were the ones closest to Jian Chen. In the surroundings, many more life-devouring beasts gathered over. Except due to their varying distances and speeds, they would make contact with Jian Chen and Sen Ran at different times. Sen Ran sensed the rapidly approaching life-devouring beasts in the surroundings too. He was ashen and despair filled his eyes. He said viciously, "Even if you kill me, you won't be able to live either. You've already become surrounded by many regional king life-devouring beasts. Under their attacks, you won't be able to escape even if your strength hasn't been suppressed by the 2 world mountains. If I were you, I'd choose to leave this place in a hurry, just in case I become surrounded and die here. After all, this is the 2 world mountains, not outside." As he listened to that, Jian Chen could not help but scan around. His expression immediately became serious. The strength of the 2 world mountains could not be underestimated. It was no weaker than the Dark Star race. This time, there were a total of 12 life-devouring beasts above the 5th heavenly layer. This number had already surpassed what the Dark Star race possessed. This was because the Dark Star race only had the 10 Hall Masters and the Dark Star Emperor as people who had exceeded the 5th heavenly layer. And, the Emperor rarely showed himself. However, just as Jian Chen's attention was directed to the surroundings, determination immediately flashed through Sen Ran's eyes. In the next moment, there was a thunderous boom, and Sen Ran's body exploded loudly. His tremendous cultivation at the 5th heavenly layer of Infinite Prime had actually turned into a finger 1 meter in length instantly, radiating with startling might. This finger had condensed all of Sen Ran's power. It was the entire cultivation that a 5th heavenly layer Infinite Prime had developed across countless years, all condensed into the finger. As a result, the strength of the finger had completely surpassed the limits of the 5th heavenly layer. It had already reached the peak of the 6th heavenly layer, or even touching the boundary to the 7th heavenly layer. However, Sen Ran was not dead. His body had been destroyed, but his soul remained. His dim soul had been wrapped up in energy, turning into a streak of light and fleeing from the 2 world mountains as his body exploded. As for the finger that condensed all of his power, it shot towards Jian Chen with terrifying force enough to rip through space. Jian Chen's eyes shone. He could clearly sense an ancient and powerful will within the finger. It was also the existence of this will that prevented the restrictive powers of the 2 world mountains from touching the finger, allowing the finger to completely unleash its power within the special environment of the 2 world mountains without weakening at all. A sliver of the Dark Star race Grand Exalt's will? Jian Chen murmured. With a flash, he vanished instantly, and when he reappeared, he was already 100 kilometers away. However, his presence had been locked onto, so the startlingly powerful finger of energy turned into a black streak of light in pursuit of Jian Chen. It pierced through space along the way, completely neglecting the distance that existed. It traveled across 100 kilometers in an instant, appearing before Jian Chen. Afterwards, it passed through Jian Chen's body without the slightest obstruction. However, that was just a blur Jian Chen had left behind. His actual body had already appeared another 100 kilometers away through the use of the laws of space. He stood on the back of the primordial realm life-devouring beast that had arrived first, the one with a leopard's body and a butterfly's wings. In the instant that Jian Chen appeared, The life-devouring beast had sensed him, but it was in no shape to pay attention to the figure that had appeared on its back. Its eyes narrowed as it stared straight at the finger of energy that shot towards it with lightning speed as a streak of black light. This life-devouring beast's strength was around the 5th heavenly layer. Faced with a finger that bore a sliver of the Dark Star Race Grand Exalt's will that had already reached the peak of the 6th heavenly layer, it experienced a sense of unprecedented danger. Its intelligence was insufficient for it to realize that the finger was not targeting it, but the figure on its back. Its instincts told it that since the finger was rushing towards it, it was its enemy. Its 2 pairs of wings immediately emitted a dazzling glow. They furled up, forming a huge blade of light that directly cut into the incoming finger of energy. Boom! Within the thunderous sounds, the attack from the life-devouring beast was utterly useless before the finger of energy. It was pulverized instantly, and the finger of energy continued onwards, landing on the life-devouring beast mercilessly with the power of the 6th heavenly layer. The life-devouring beast let out a painful wail. Its colossal body fell out of the air as dark green liquid flowed out of its hawk head. Its entire head had cracked, and the butterfly wings on its back had become extremely tattered. As a matter of fact, a small part of it had become missing, such that the wings were no longer complete. As for Jian Chen, who had been standing on its back, he had already vanished at a certain time. To the other side, Sen Ran's soul rapidly fled outside under the protection of a ball of energy. Even though he had already been reduced to a soul, his presence still leaked out in all directions, allowing all the primordial realm experts to sense him. When he was in possession of his body, Sen Ran could use secret techniques to mask his presence, but now that he was just a soul, he could not disguise his presence even if he wanted to. As such, he became a glowing light bulb in the eyes of all the primordial realm life-devouring beasts within the 2 world mountains. As for Jian Chen, his presence had already vanished completely when Sen Ran's finger of energy struck the butterfly-winged life-devouring beast. I may have lost my body, but that's an attack condensed from my entire life's worth of cultivation. Even if your strength has completely reached the 6th heavenly layer, it still won't be easy for you to block it. By the time you've caught your breath, the regional king life-devouring beasts would have gotten to you already. All that awaits you is death. I might not be able to hide my presence when I'm just a soul, but I've sped up instead. There's no chance for these life-devouring beasts to catch up to me. Xueqi, no, I should say Xueqi, you're still lacking a little if you want to kill this hall master. Sen Ran sneered as he fled. He was not pained by the loss of his body at all. The greatest advantage of the Dark Star race was their lack of internal strife, allowing them all to live extremely lengthy lives. As long as their souls remained, they would all have ample time to recover their lost cultivation. I'm lacking a little if I want to kill you? Hallmaster Sen Ran, aren't you overestimating yourself a little too much? But at this moment, a nonchalant and slightly sarcastic voice rang out from ahead. The voice was like the god of death's declaration. It immediately made Sen Ran's soul tremble, as shock, despair, and disbelief flooded his eyes. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2777. Sen Ran's death. Jian Chen silently appeared in front of Sen Ran with his arms crossed, as if he had been waiting there for quite some time already. Immediately, Sen Ran's soul that flew as fast as possible came to a halt. He fearfully looked at Jian Chen, who blocked his path, before fleeing in another direction without the slightest hesitation. He was utterly terrified. He moved even faster this time. His soul seemed to be covered in a ball of fire. As his speed increased, Sen Ran's soul visibly weakened. Now, he was truly fleeing in desperation, regardless of the cost. He had already unleashed a secret technique to ignite his soul, just so that he could move even faster. In a split second, Sen Ran's soul had flown several hundred meters away. He was truly fast, immediately pulling away from the several dozen primordial realm life-devouring beasts behind him. Jian Chen could not help but sneer. He did not take off in Sen Ran's direction in pursuit. Instead, the space around him rippled, and under the powers of space, he had already vanished. Ah! Impossible, that's impossible. How can you be faster than me? In the next moment, Sen Ran shrieked out several hundred kilometers in the forest, filled with disbelief and despair. Just like before, Jian Chen hovered in the air with his arms crossed right before him, completely calm and composed. He seemed like he was playing a game of cat and mouse. Senran, don't even think about running away in front of me. Let alone the two world mountains, you don't have the slightest chance of escaping if I want to kill you even if we're in the territory of the Dark Star race, Jian Chen said nonchalantly. With that, he suddenly extended his hand and reached towards Senran's soul. With that, the space around Senran immediately solidified. His soul also became restrained by the space, utterly immobilized there. If he were still whole, he could easily break out of the frozen space with a great power in his body, but now that he was just a soul, he had lost his greatest reserve of power. As a result, he was like a lamb to the slaughter under Jian Chen's restraint. His head was on the chopping block. The laws of space. You've actually grasped the laws of space. Only now did Senran realize why Jian Chen had managed to appear in front of him so many times, even moving faster than when he burned his soul. He was actually thinking he could escape from a primordial realm expert who had grasped the laws of space. All of it had truly been a waste of effort. At this moment, Senran truly lost all hope. He understood that even if he could move several times faster, there was no chance for him to escape from a primordial realm expert who had grasped the laws of space. Gu Qi, with your strength and talent, you're probably a one-of-a-kind supreme prodigy even within the Saints' world that's filled with experts. I don't understand why you would spend so much effort and take on so much risk to infiltrate our Dark Star race with your status. Is it for the various resources your outside world requires? Senran asked in doubt. He knew it was impossible for him to escape. All he could hope for was to die knowing a little more. In the surroundings, the presence given off by the primordial realm life-devouring beasts drew closer and closer. Senran's presence was like a lantern in the dark, indicating a clear direction for these life-devouring beasts, making them rush towards him swiftly. In just a few seconds, Senran would be encircled by the life-devouring beasts. Since you want to know so much, I'll let you die knowing. Do you still remember the divine beast your Dark Star race captured? That divine beast is like family to me. Yet your Dark Star race actually wants to sacrifice my family for the success of your great ceremony. I've come to the Dark Star world this time to interfere with your great ceremony and save the divine beast, Jian Chen said emotionlessly. Whenever someone mentioned Sacred Feather, who had gone through torture he still had no idea about, he would be filled with killing intent. Hearing that, Senran fell silent. Only sorrow filled his eyes. A while later he smiled. He smiled rather madly, rather crazily. He muttered to himself, never did I ever think that our great ceremony would fail over a single divine beast after all these years of preparation. These were Senran's last words. After he said that, the frozen space around him turned back to normal. Jian Chen, who hovered before him with his presence concealed the entire time, silently vanished once more. As soon as Jian Chen had vanished, a colossal ape, several hundred meters tall and standing like a mountain, appeared in front of Senran. It let out a deafening roar, directly swinging its hand towards Senran's soul. As the ape swung out, 3 other colossal figures appeared in 3 other directions. They directly locked onto Senran's soul that gave off the presence of the Dark Star race and launched attacks together. The outcome was as clear as day. Senran's frail soul could not even put up a fight before the primordial realm life-devouring beasts. He was crushed to death as easily as crushing an ant to death. Senran died. An esteemed high-level primordial realm expert of the Dark Star race had died in the Two-World Mountains so easily. No one even knew about his death. As for the several dozen primordial realm life-devouring beasts that had yet to arrive, they all came to a halt, perhaps because they sensed the expert of the Dark Star race had already died. They subsequently let out roars at the sky. It was as if they were telling one another, but it was also as if they were celebrating over this. For a moment, terrifying roars filled the depths of the Two-World Mountains. It even reached the outskirts, which made the many cultivators of the Saints' world who had entered the outskirts to hunt life-devouring beasts uneasy. They had no idea what had happened. However, unbeknownst to Jian Chen, an illusionary figure appeared 10,000 meters above where Senran died. He seemed to have merged with the world, where every single movement of his possessed the charm of the ways, yet also resonated with the ways. Even the special environment of the Two-World Mountains could not obstruct him at all. No one knew when he had appeared, much less how long he had existed for. However, he had seen the entire battle between Jian Chen and Senran and the process of Senran's death. No one could discover his existence. All of the primordial realm life-devouring beasts, and even Jian Chen failed to sense him at all. Even Jian Chen's sharp senses were unable to find anything amiss here. 2 of the masters of the 10 divine halls of the Dark Star race are already gone. Having lost 2 hall masters, the great ceremony will definitely be affected. Combined with Jian Chen, the chess piece hidden within the Dark Star race, who can make trouble at a critical moment, ha ha ha, the great ceremony of the Dark Star race is destined for failure this time. The figure let out a great laugh in the surging mist. His laughter was filled with joy, as if the failure of the Dark Star race's great ceremony was extremely important to him. Afterwards, the figure strode away through the air and left this place. Whenever he took a step, the surroundings would change, the world would spin, and even the sun and moon seemed to invert. In the moment before, he was still in the depths of the 2 world mountains, but by the time he had taken a step, he had already across an unimaginable distance. He directly left the 2 world mountains and even crossed most of the Dark Star race's territory, appearing before the capital city of the Dark Star race. In the end, he vanished in there. Among the 36 major cities of the Dark Star race, Dark Knight City was the closest to the 2 world mountains. However, even someone who had grasped the laws of space like Jian Chen would have to teleport to Dark Knight City and then fly at high speed for a while if he wanted to go from the capital city to the 2 world mountains. If he did not use a teleportation formation and directly flew over to the 2 world mountains, the distance he would have to cross would be several tens of million kilometers at the very least, or even reaching the hundreds of millions. Even with Jian Chen's speed, it would take quite a while. Yet right now, the illusionary figure had used only a single step to traverse this distance. His terrifying speed was utterly unheard of. And, from how relaxed and composed he seemed, like he was going on a stroll, crossing over 100 million kilometers in a single step probably was not even his limit. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2778. Finally making a return in the depths of the 2 world mountains several hundred kilometers away from where San Ran had died, Jian Chen stood in front of a lake, having returned to his original appearance. His presence was completely withdrawn, such that the many life-devouring beasts hiding within the lake failed to sense his existence. The lake was part of a primordial realm life-devouring beast's territory. However, the primordial realm life-devouring beast had left to kill San Ran. It had traveled quite far away, so it had yet to return. And, the primordial realm life-devouring beast was not the only beast living in the lake. At the same time, there were many God King life-devouring beasts and ones below God Kings. They remained submerged at the bottom of the lake peacefully, as if they were using their own special method to cultivate. The senses of Jian Chen's soul spread out. His powerful senses allowed him to see exactly what was going on within the lake. As a matter of fact, even the hole that served as the nest for the primordial realm life-devouring beast in the center of the lake failed to escape his senses. I'll leave Kuan Tian's items here for now. Even if experts of the Dark Star race end up finding it here, I can say that I lost it by accident as I fought against life-devouring beasts, just in case these items give my identity away. Jian Chen muttered to himself quietly. Then, the 2 god artifacts that belonged to Kuan Tian appeared in his hand. Through the powers of space, he deposited the 2 god artifacts into the center of the lake, within the nest that clearly belonged to the primordial realm life-devouring beast. They were buried within a large pile of rubbish. Jian Chen had already found out that the life-devouring beast that dwelled in the lake was at around the 4th heavenly layer of infinite prime. Under the circumstances of suppressed strength, a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime of the Dark Star race was indeed unable to deal with such a life-devouring beast. It would be reasonable for him to lose his god artifacts here. Afterwards, Jian Chen carefully checked through his space ring, focusing on the 30,000 or so stalks of high-grade God King grass. Only after double-checking that they were not imprinted with anything did he leave at ease. Soon after Jian Chen had left, the Lord of the Lake finally returned to its nest. It was a huge python over 1,000 meters in length. Its body was absolutely colossal. Its large eyes, the size of lanterns, flickered with rather bright light. Life-devouring beasts that had reached the primordial realm would possess some basic intelligence, but clearly, it was still nowhere close to a regular person's intelligence. As soon as it had returned to its nest, it sensed that something was amiss. Its huge eyes scanned the area and eventually landed on the pile of rubbish in a corner.
Its gaze locked onto the armor and god artifact that had suddenly appeared under the rubbish and tilted its head in thought.
Its memory seemed to tell it that these two items did not exist in the pile of rubbish. It was unable to think about anything even after quite a while, so it just stopped thinking about it. It stopped caring about these items that had appeared out of thin air, curling up on the ground and snoring away. On the outskirts of the Two-World Mountains, many cultivators from the outside world gathered in small groups, scattered in various places within the outskirts. These people originally wanted to take advantage of the high prices the Dark Star race was offering to kill a few life-devouring beasts and make some money. But now, all of them had completely lost interest in trying to hunt. They all withdrew their presences and hid away carefully, gazing into the depths of the Two-World Mountains uneasily. As a matter of fact, there were even a few timid people who had begun to tremble from fright. Their faces were pale as they tried their best to persuade their companions to retreat quickly together. All of this happened because of the shocking roars of beasts from the depths of the Two-World Mountains. To these small hunting groups composed of god-kings or even over-gods at most, primordial realm life-devouring beasts that lived in the depths of the Two-World Mountains had always been a mere legend. But today, they had actually heard the roars of so many primordial realm life-devouring beasts at the same time, which immediately frightened the wits out of them. I ain't doing this anymore. If you want to stay, then you can stay. I'm not gonna be accompanying you anymore. Just in case those terrifying existences really do emerge from the depths, there aren't even enough of us to serve as a snack. I'm going back. The price offered by the Dark Star race is very tempting, but you gotta be alive first if you want to take advantage of it. If you lose your life, you won't be able to enjoy anything no matter what you possess. The Two-World Mountains clearly aren't very peaceful right now, so let's retreat for now. Jian Chen flew in the direction of the 100 Saint City silently like a ghost. By now, he had already passed through the thick mist and arrived on the outskirts. He immediately discovered large groups of cultivators pulling out of the Two-World Mountains. Jian Chen could not help but sigh at this sight. If it were not for his great strength, he probably would have become a member of this retreating group if faced with this predicament. I'm still not strong enough. Jian Chen clenched his fists. He knew he was strong enough to run around fearlessly among the Dark Star race, but in the Saints' world and Immortals' world, he was nothing. Unfortunately, he still had not broken through with the laws of the sword, and his chaotic body had been stuck at the 14th layer due to the limitations of laws. If he wanted to reach the 15th layer of the chaotic body, then he had to make a breakthrough with the laws of the sword and reach the partial achievement of Sword Immortal. The laws become more difficult to comprehend the further you go. Every increase will require accumulation over lengthy periods of time. Now that I can't rely on the Fortune Jade pedestal, comprehending the ways won't be as easy as before. I have no idea when I'll be able to reach the partial achievement of Sword Immortal, Jian Chen thought. He knew that as long as he reached the partial achievement of Sword Immortal, even the greatest expert of the Dark Star race, the Dark Star Emperor who could rival chaotic primes in battle prowess, would not be his opponent. By then, he would even be able to cut down real chaotic primes. The fruit of nurturing ways is my opportunity to break through to partial achievement, but I still can't touch it yet. Not to mention that it's still not completely ripe, such that its effects are nowhere near enough. I'll have to save Sacred Feather first even if I do want to go for it. Jian Chen calculated inside. Sacred Feather's life was still in the hands of the Dark Star Emperor. His life was at the Dark Star Emperor's whim, which made Jian Chen hesitant. Before long, Jian Chen had arrived outside the gate tower of the 100 Saint City. The 100 Saint City was still enveloped by the powerful defensive formation, only leaving the city gates open for entry and exit. Security was very tight at the entrance. The several dozen peak organizations stationed in the 100 Saint City had all sent a few sacrificial god kings to guard the place. They would make every cultivator entering the city undergo the strictest body search. Clearly, the entire city was in a state of high vigilance after going through the disaster caused by the 7th Divine Hall. Even with the 5th Divine Hall stepping forward and offering protection, none of the organizations dared to place all their hopes on the 5th Divine Hall. Jian Chen was in no hurry to enter the city. Instead, he stood outside the city gates and secretly established a connection with the sliver of the power of his soul he had left with He Qianqian. At the same time, He Qianqian was listening to the reports of the recent situation within the city from a person below. Currently, she was in the Divine Hall that belonged to the Heavenly Crane clan. Suddenly, He Qianqian's expression changed. With a flip of her hand, she took out the Divine Hall Jian Chen had given her. She immediately sent in the senses of her soul, observing it carefully. In the next moment, He Qianqian's face lit up and became overjoyed. She immediately rushed out of the divine hall despite the person reporting below. Then she contacted Jin Hong before flying towards the city gates. In another region of the 100 Saint City, in the divine hall that belonged to the Dire Wolf clan, Jin Hong currently focused on sculpting a piece of wood. Suddenly, he heard the message from He Qianqian, and Jin Hong's hand immediately paused. A gleam of light flashed through his eyes, and he looked in the direction of the city gates. Gradually, his lips curled into a faint smile, as if he was filled with relief. Yang Yutian, you've finally come out. I knew you would be fine, and you would definitely return safely. Sure enough, you haven't disappointed me. The wooden sculpture and sculpting blade in Jin Hong's hand vanished. He tidied his clothes before striding out of the divine hall, making his way over to the city gates. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2779. Yang Yutian must die outside the city gates. Jian Chen stood on the side of the main path with his arms across, gazing at the outsiders that flowed in and out as he waited patiently. Almost a minute later, the white-clothed He Qianqian and Jin Hong, who was dressed in extremely simple clothes, appeared on the tall walls of the city simultaneously. Their eyes immediately locked onto Jian Chen, who stood below calmly. Right now, Jian Chen seemed travel-weary and slightly exhausted. His long hair was a bit messy, while his white robes were covered in green splatters and dust. Part of the robes was even slightly tattered. Jin Hong and He Qianqian could recognize with a single glance that the green splatters on Jian Chen came from plants within the Two World Mountains. Combined with his tattered robes and exhaustion, it clearly stated just how tough it had been for him within the Two World Mountains. He Qianqian was deeply touched when she saw Jian Chen in his current state. She knew it was Jian Chen who had stood forward without hesitation when they were being chased by a late God King life-devouring beast, leading it away despite the great danger, thus earning them the precious time to escape. And because of this, Jian Chen had remained in the depths of the Two World Mountains for such a long time. She had no idea exactly what Jian Chen had gone through in the Two World Mountains, but she knew the heavy price the group had paid and the dangers they had faced when she moved through the Two World Mountains with them. She knew exactly how difficult it had been to emerge from the Two World Mountains in one piece. Even a huge group with such great strength had suffered so much, let alone Jian Chen who had traveled alone. Jin Hong leapt off the wall, ignoring the soldiers nearby who bowed towards him and arrived before Jian Chen instantly. He extended his hand and patted Jian Chen's shoulder firmly, laughing aloud. Yang Yutian, you finally bothered to come out. You even made me think you didn't want to come out of the Two World Mountains. As he said that, Jin Hong's eyes twinkled. Once again, he sensed the power of his bloodline surge and grow reckless from the close contact with Jian Chen, as if it had been set on fire, burning with deep desire. It was as if Jian Chen possessed something of extremely great importance to him, enough to make the power of his bloodline rouse. Brother Jin Hong, you can't say that. I was constantly on edge in the Two World Mountains. I would have lost my life from the slightest carelessness. It's not that I didn't want to emerge sooner. Instead, I couldn't. Jian Chen smiled bitterly. He Qianqian and Jin Hong agreed with him. They could guess that Yang Yutian must have been chased down by many life-devouring beasts during the time he spent in the Two World Mountains, fleeing for his life constantly by using the laws of space. Under such circumstances, he would have no choice but to take many detours. He might have even been forced to loop around any powerful life-devouring beasts blocking his path. When they thought of this, Jin Hong and He Qianqian's shame intensified. Yang Yutian, we've really made you suffer. But don't worry. He Qianqian, will make it up to you one way or another for what you've gone through in the Two World Mountains. He Qianqian arrived before Jian Chen too, standing beside Jin Hong and thanking him from the bottom of her heart. Yeah. You lead away that life-devouring beast king without any hesitation at all, saving us all. We all owe you a favor. I, Jin Hong, will help you redeem this favor from everyone, Jin Hong swore solemnly too. Subsequently, under Jin Hong and He Qianqian's personal invitation and accompaniment, Jian Chen entered the 100 Saints city smoothly. In the end, he was invited to the heavenly crane divine hall by He Qianqian. After all, Jian Chen was technically still a member of the Heavenly Crane clan. As long as he remained in the world of the fallen beast, his current identity would be tied to the Heavenly Crane clan. In the 100 Saint City, both He Chanqian and Jin Hong were figures who bore great influence, as both of them held the greatest status among their respective clans out of everyone who had been sent to the 100 Saint City. They each lead numerous sacrificial god kings, and when the need arose, they could both unleash power at the primordial realm. As a result, Jian Chen obviously received the attention of many organizations in the city when both of them personally invited him into the city, catching the interest of all these organizations. They immediately reported this piece of news to the person in charge of their organizations. Immediately, the leaders of the various organizations became stunned and taken aback when they received this news in the divine halls within their respective regions of the city. What did you say? He Chanqian and Jin Hong personally received a cultivator outside, inviting him into the city? With their status, just who possesses the right for them to personally receive him? You aren't mistaken, right? It was really He Chanqian and Jin Hong who personally received a person from the saints' world outside the city? That's impossible. Who do you think He Chanqian and Jin Hong are? One of them is a direct descendant of the Heavenly Crane clan, while the other one is the young master of the Dire Wolf clan. In terms of status, they're much more noble than me. Who's important enough for them to personally receive him? Hold on. Draw me a portrait of the person. Immediately, a god began drawing in the air. He used his finger as a brush and energy as the ink, drawing a vivid portrait of Jian Chen. This was a piece of cake to any godhood cultivator. It's actually Yang Yutian. That's impossible. Yang Yutian actually hasn't died. He emerged from the two-world mountains alive. At almost the same time, the representatives of the various organizations obtained an image of Jian Chen. However, following their shock after learning that Jian Chen had emerged safely from the two-world mountains, they all reacted differently. Amongst the many organizations, the Empire Lotus Sword Sect, the 100 Battle Clan, the Scarlet Light Clan, the Greenfields Clan, the Man Family, the Sun Family, and so on rejoiced for Jian Chen's safe return. As a matter of fact, a handful of the leaders, such as Ping Yixing of the Empire Lotus Sect, immediately sent people to prepare a gift after learning about Jian Chen's return, personally bringing the gift to the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. Of course, there were many organizations who remained indifferent. Jian Chen's sacrifice in the two-world mountains had not gained everyone's recognition. In the eyes of a few prodigies with great statuses who had already grown accustomed to being protected by others, they believed this was what Jian Chen should have done. It was as if they believed this was the purpose of independent cultivators. Bang! At the same time, the sound of smashed bottles and vases constantly rang out in the divine hall of the Chu family. Chu Jie was utterly furious. He had completely lost his temper. In the majestic hall, all the ornamental vases and bottles had been smashed by him, and all the furniture had been tipped over. The entire divine hall was a mess. Nearby, a few overgod old men stood in silent fear. They could only allow Chu Jie to throw his tantrum. A while later, when there was nothing else left in the divine hall that he could use to vent his anger, Chu Tian finally stopped. His eyes were slightly bloodshot, but his gaze was shocking. It radiated with killing intent as he gasped heavily. I thought Yang Yutian already died in the two-world mountains, but not only is he still alive, but he has even returned in one piece. Luck sure is on his side. But that's even better. I'll get the opportunity to personally kill you, Yang Yutian. I could do nothing to you due to the limitations of the environment in the two-world mountains, but now that we're outside, your life no longer lies in your hands. You're very strong, but no matter how strong you are you supposed to possess the power to rival the primordial realm? Zhou Ji of the Yuqiong clan, Gong Rui's of the Gong family, Zhao Wenbin of the Zhao family, and Kong Feiying of the Congqiong clan surged with killing intent when they received news about Jian Chen's return. At that moment, the five of them made the same decision. Yang Yutian must die. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2780. Various reactions in the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. Jian Chen, He Chanqian, and Jin Hong were visited by over a dozen organizations soon after they had returned. Moreover, these organizations were personally led by their prodigies, and they arrived with lavish gifts. These people were obviously all warmly received by He Chanqian. She personally went out, inviting these representatives into the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. Then, she arranged a banquet to entertain them. Yang Yutian, looks like we've all underestimated you. We never thought you could actually survive for so long in the depths of the Two World Mountains.
Your strength and courage are truly admirable. Brother Yang Yutian, it was all thanks to you for standing forward and luring away the late God King life-devouring Beast King back then. If the Beast King managed to make its way into the group, the consequence would be unthinkable with its terrifying ability to devour life force. Brother Yang Yutian, tell us how you managed to escape from the life-devouring Beast King? Did you use the laws of space to completely outrun it? Though you really are bold. The depths of the Two World Mountains are shrouded with mist, limiting your range of vision severely. Even the senses of souls are heavily suppressed. Under those circumstances, you were still bold enough to travel using the laws of space, completely undeterred by the possibility of running into a nest of danger from moving too quickly. Brother Yang, tell us how you managed to survive for all these days in the Two World Mountains, as well as what kinds of dangers you encountered so that we can all learn from you. A large round table was covered with delicacies as the prodigies gathered around it, drinking and talking merrily. Candid laughter would ring out from time to time amidst the conversations. Jian Chen maintained a smile the entire time, dealing with everyone's questions calmly. As for what he went through in the Two World Mountains, he explained it all by weaving facts with lies. All of the facts were descriptions about the strangely shaped life-devouring beasts in the Two World Mountains. As for any parts that seemed dangerous, he touched on them lightly before moving on easily. Even though Jian Chen had described it with great ease, everyone present understood that the dangers and threats hidden within had completely exceeded their imaginations. After the banquet, the visiting prodigies all took out their gifts for Jian Chen. They wanted to express their gratitude and befriend him. Back in the Two World Mountains, these people had never been so enthusiastic, as even they were uncertain about whether they could emerge from the mountains in one piece. They had also contemplated whether Yang Yutian would end up dying in the Two World Mountains, so they all held back with how they treated him. Now that they had emerged successfully and the path of retreat had already been repaired, their lives were no longer under threat, so they clearly considered a much larger picture. They became interested in roping in a prodigy like Yang Yutian. After all, not only was he exceptionally talented, but he was also extraordinarily powerful. Of course, the true reason why these people were interested was because Yang Yutian was still an independent cultivator. As for the lavish gifts they had given out, they were just some supreme-grade divine crystals, various heavenly resources, pills and so on. Someone even gave him the notes on cultivation from a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime. After all, Jian Chen was just a mid-god king in their eyes. They believed the standard of gifts they had given out would be extremely enticing to any god king. Not to mention this was the Dark Star world where resources were scarce. As a result, these gifts became even more precious. Jian Chen really was uninterested in any of these items, but given the situation, he could only accept them reluctantly. I think we should hold a grand banquet for Yang Yutian in 3 days' time. We should invite all the organizations of the city to attend, to celebrate Brother Yang Yutian's safe return. At this moment, Jin Hong came up with a suggestion. His suggestion made all the prodigies at the table fall into a temporary silence. Many of them were uncertain. They wanted to say something, but they hesitated, as they all felt that Jin Hong's suggestion was a bit of an overkill. In their eyes, they did indeed owe Yang Yutian a favor for his sacrifices in the Two World Mountains. However, favors came in different shapes and sizes. The favor they owed to Yang Yutian was not that big. They believed all they had to do was offer him some benefits. If they did not mind Yang Yutian's lowly identity as an independent cultivator, or they were interested in befriending and roping him in, they would just personally pay a visit like right now at most and thank him out of courtesy. That should have been enough. However, if they were supposed to hold a special grand banquet that all organizations in the city participated just for Yang Yutian for this favor they owed him, it would indeed be going a little too far. If Yang Yutian possessed a major background, then they would be perfectly fine with Jin Hong's suggestion. However, he just happened to be an independent cultivator, someone without a sect or clan. It made the prodigies seated here rather reluctant to go along with it. Ha ha ha, all right. That's quite a good suggestion, Brother Jin Hong. I, Ping Yixing, will represent the Empire Lotus Sword sect and provide full support in arranging the banquet for Yang Yutian. The silence lasted for just a few seconds before Ping Yixing expressed his opinion first, expressing his complete support of the idea. With someone taking the lead, all the prodigies present could only smile and express their agreement and support. Since they had come here in person, it had already expressed their take on this. They obviously could not change their minds now. First of all, this suggestion had come from Jin Hong. Given that there were no major conflicts of interest, they would never want to offend Jin Hong for no good reason. Moreover, these people were interested in befriending or roping in Jian Chen, so they obviously would not want to displease him over something as petty as this. I thank you all for your kind intentions, but you really mustn't. Jian Chen tried to decline immediately, but under the persuasions of Jin Hong, He Chanqian, and the prodigies, his objection became rather powerless. As a result, the matter of the grand banquet was decided like this. This news reached the various organizations in the city as quickly as possible. Among these organizations, basically everyone who admitted they owed Jian Chen a favor had already gathered in the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. The rest clearly did not take him seriously. They all believed that Jian Chen was supposed to make the sacrifices he did in the Two World Mountains. As such, as soon as they received the news, over half of the organizations sneered in response. What's wrong with Jin Hong? He actually wants to make such a ruckus to hold a grand banquet for a mere independent cultivator, even requesting us all to attend. If it weren't for the fact that he's too powerful for me to be his opponent and he's the successor of a grand exalt, I really should slap him across the face. Jin Hong. Oh Jin Hong. Do you really think we're still in the Two World Mountains, where you're in charge of everything? We've already taken back the 100 Saints city successfully, so the alliance from before no longer exists. Even if you have the halo of a grand exalt successor, you don't have any power over us anymore. As for this so-called banquet, what a joke. It's as foolish as you can get. Similar responses rang out in the divine halls in various regions of the city. Many prodigies snorted in contempt when they heard Jin Hong's suggestion. Of course, there were some exceptions too. In a completely violet divine hall, a young man sat on the throne in thought, clutching an invitation. A while later, a smile appeared on his face. He murmured, Jin Hong is clearly trying to befriend Yang Yuqian with this, while the dozen or so other organizations are clearly participating because they're interested in Yang Yuqian. Though, this Yang Yuqian person really is quite capable. He can enter here, which means he's under a millennium old. To be able to reach his current level of cultivation at such a young age, he's even more monstrous than those prodigies raised by peak clans in the Saints' world. And he just happens to be so powerful too. Deducing from his performance in the Two World Mountains, Yang Yuqian's overall strength probably approaches Jin Hong's. Yep. If I can rope in a person with such monstrous talent into the clan, he'll definitely have grand achievements in the future once he's nurtured by the clan. It'll obviously be a service of great merit for me too as the person behind it all. When he thought up to this point, the young man's eyes lit up. He immediately called out, Guards, immediately pick out some of the most beautiful women for me. They'll attend the banquet as representatives of our Violet Spirit clan. Tell them that if any of them manage to capture Yang Yuqian's heart and gets him to join our Violet Spirits clan, I'll personally put in a good word for her to the Patriarch so that our Violet Spirits clan will focus our efforts on nurturing her. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2781. News about the ice pole plane within the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. The visiting prodigies had already left one after another. Only Jin Hong, Jian Chen, and He Chanqian were left inside. The gathering today had already ended, and Jin Hong was clearly thinking about leaving, but he seemed rather hesitant. He glanced at Jian Chen, as if he wanted to ask him something, but he stopped himself in the end. In reality, he had always been curious about what Jian Chen possessed. He wondered why his bloodline would become uncontrollably restless, or even overcome with desire, whenever he approached Jian Chen. This question had bugged him ever since they were in the Two World Mountains. However, none of them had any power over their fates back then. They did not even know whether they could emerge from the Two World Mountains alive, so why would he be in the mood to care about this? As a result, all he did was dismiss it temporarily. Now that he had settled down, he became eager to get to the bottom of this mystery again. However, he, Jin Hong, had his own morals to follow. He hesitated because the thing that roused his bloodline could be extremely important to Jian Chen. If he just asked about it rashly, It would be very inappropriate. It would be if it led to any misunderstandings. He was a member of the wolf clan. He was born with a sharp sense of smell, and he had gained the legacy of a grand exalt, which made his sense of smell even sharper. Through this, he could clearly identify Jian Chen to be someone worthy of befriending, so he had wanted to become Jian Chen's acquaintance a long time ago. He did not want to make things difficult for Jian Chen over something like this either, which would make them drift apart. After hesitating for quite a while, Jin Hong decided to continue hiding the curiosity in his heart. He bid farewell to Jian Chen and He Chanqian before leaving the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. Yang Yutian, Jin Hong seems rather interested in you. He Chanqian had noticed Jin Hong's expressions, so she turned around and smiled slightly at Jian Chen. Perhaps. Jian Chen did not deny it. He obviously knew what Jin Hong was hesitating over. Clearly, he had been drawn to the essence blood from the ancient sky wolf. He knew it was impossible for Jin Hong to know that he possessed a droplet of essence blood, but by being attracted to it, Jin Hong could clearly deduce that Jian Chen possessed a great fortuitous encounter to him. Faced with an enticing fortuitous encounter, regular people probably would have tried stealing it from him already, regardless of the consequences. However, Jin Hong remained calm the entire time, without giving off a single hint of brutality or desire, which instead increased Jian Chen's respect for Jin Hong. In the saint's world, he had witnessed far too much deception and scheming. At the same time, he had seen far too many examples of people betraying good friends over cultivation resources. Someone as morally upright as Jin Hong was uncommon. At this moment, He Chanqian's voice rang out again. The Dark Star world hasn't been very peaceful lately, so it's best if you don't leave the 100 Saint City for now. The grievances between our city and the 7th Divine Hall has grown. If you were just a regular person, it would be fine. The Dark Star race would not care. However, you're different. With your talent, you'll probably be hunted down the moment you leave the city. Subsequently, He Chanqian took the initiative and told him about what she had roughly gone through after leaving the Two World Mountains. In particular, she went into great detail about the conflict with the 7th Divine Hall so that Jian Chen could gain a clear understanding about the current situation. The 5th Divine Hall is only protecting us temporarily, but if we can't produce what the 5th Divine Hall requires, they'll abandon us sooner or later. As a result, before the 5th Divine Hall has actually granted us a promise for protection, it's best if we don't leave the city, He Chanqian said sternly. Her worries for the future were quite obvious from her expression. When he heard that, Jian Chen's expression became rather strange. He seemed to smile. I never thought you'd actually go through so much after leaving the Two World Mountains, much less almost dying to the hands of the 7th Hall Master. But don't worry, I won't leave the city without good reason. Jian Chen continued, "Oh right, I heard your Heavenly Crane clan is located on the Ice Pole Plain of the 7 Sacred Plains. Can you tell me about the Ice Pole Plain, such as what other powerful organizations there are apart from the renowned Ice Goddess Hall?" He Chanqian walked over to a chair and sat down. She said in a self-deprecating manner, "The 7 Sacred Plains? That's already a matter of the past. The current Ice Pole Plain is only a sacred plain in name. Even the Ice Goddess Hall that once dominated the entire place has been claimed by some minor organization that even our Heavenly Crane clan did not take seriously in the past." Jian Chen was stunned by that. What? A minor organization has actually taken over the Ice Goddess Hall? I've never seen the Ice Goddess Hall before, but I've heard it's an extremely powerful god artifact. If even a minor organization can claim it, why didn't your Heavenly Crane clan do anything? Don't tell me your Heavenly Crane clan can't even defeat that minor organization anymore? Oh right, what's the minor organization called? He Chanqian broke into laughter. The organization is called the Moon God Hall. It said that the Moon God Hall did not even have a Grand Prime in the past. Their strongest was the Master of the Moon God Hall, a mere 9th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Prime. An organization like that can't even make it into the top 20 in the Ice Pole Plain. In the eyes of our Heavenly Crane clan, it indeed is just a minor organization. After all, our Heavenly Crane clan is a powerful organization that ranks 3rd on the plane. Aside from the Ice Goddess Hall, the Ice Pole Plain has a total of 18 organizations with Grand Primes. It's obvious just how powerful we are to be able to rank 3rd among so many organizations. Even if the Moon God Hall has a Grand Prime now, they'll just be a low-level Grand Prime at most. With the strength of our Heavenly Crane clan, we can annihilate the Moon God Hall with a lift of a finger. When she reached there, He Qianqian showed a sliver of disdain. Clearly, she did not take the Moon God Hall seriously. As for why our Heavenly Crane clan did not take over the Ice Goddess Hall, that's obviously due to a form of respect towards the Ice Goddess Hall. That is the representation of our ice pole plane after all, as well as the glory of our plane. Even though it has already declined, it's still something that cannot be desecrated to our Heavenly Crane clan. He Qianqian's voice became softer and softer. This continued until the very end, when even she did not believe her words. Her eyes flickered. Only after a moment of hesitation did she say with uncertainty, "Perhaps there's something that I don't know about going on behind the Moon God Hall taking over the Ice Goddess Hall, as logically speaking, the Ice Goddess Hall is the pride of our ice pole plane, an existence that cannot be blasphemed." Yet in the end, despite so many peak organizations more powerful than the Moon God Hall, none of them interfered and stopped them. Instead, they allowed the Moon God Hall to take over the Ice Goddess Hall. It makes no sense at all. Jian Chen was rather speechless. Originally, he wanted to learn a little bit about the Ice Goddess Hall and the Moon God Hall from He Qianqian. After all, one of these two places was connected to his elder sister, Chongyang Mingyue, while the other was connected to Fairy Hao Yu. Yet, in the end, he discovered that He Qianqian did not even know as much as him despite being from the ice pole plane. Though it did make sense. He Qianqian was just a god king after all, and she was young. She obviously would not know much about overly secret information. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2782. Releasing the seal afterwards, Jian Chen asked He Qianqian about a little more, primarily regarding the situation of the Moon God Hall and the Ice Goddess Hall. Unfortunately, he only learned a limited amount. After all, almost all information regarding the Ice Goddess Hall and the Moon God Hall was a secret. Perhaps Primordial Realm experts might have known a little more, but it would be very difficult for He Qianqian to come into contact with something like this with her strength. Yang Yutian, have you become interested in joining our Heavenly Crane clan, seeing how interested you are in the ice pole plane? With your talent, you'll definitely receive great support if you join our Heavenly Crane clan. Even reaching Chaotic Prime won't be an issue for you in the future. He Qianqian stared at Jian Chen as her eyes flickered. She was no fool. She had already realized Jian Chen's potential back then in the Two World Mountains. With his talent, many peak clans and organizations in the Saints' world would obviously try to rope him in. That was because a figure like him could potentially become a pillar of support for the clan at a certain point in the future if he was nurtured properly. He could even grow into a towering existence that supported the entire clan. Jian Chen smiled and said, "I don't have any plans on joining an organization right now. Though, I do look forward to seeing the ice pole plane. I really do want to see it with my own eyes. After all, not only is the ice pole plane one of the 7 sacred planes, but I've also heard that it's riddled with ice and snow, snowing all year round. Cultivating in such a cold climate can heavily suppress the growth of inner demons, preventing the risk of suffering from cultivation deviation." Jian Chen and He Qianqian spoke fervently. At this moment, an old overgod servant of the Heavenly Crane clan rushed in from outside. His face was filled with joy. Young miss, there's good news. There's fantastic news. The 7th Divine Hall has already removed the seal over the teleportation formations. All of us can freely use the teleportation formations now. The old servant had begun speaking excitedly from a very long way away. His face had already reddened completely, clearly extremely excited. Hearing the news, He Qianqian was left at a loss at first, as if she had yet to react to it. However, she stood up excitedly in the next moment and questioned in a hurry, "What did you say? The seal over the teleportation formations has been released? Are you certain about this?" "I'm completely certain, young miss, completely certain. It can't be wrong. It definitely can't be wrong. There have already been people who have left the Dark Star world through the teleportation formations," the old servant said with absolute certainty. He Qianqian immediately became overjoyed. The teleportation formation in their 100 Saint city was close to being repaired. As such, even if the Dark Star race had not removed the seal over the teleportation formations, the 100 Saint city would not be particularly affected. When they needed to, They could still use the teleportation formation in the 100 Saint City to directly transport themselves to the entrance of the world. However, this was not the true meaning behind releasing the seal over the teleportation formations. Most importantly, it was a gesture from the 7th Divine Hall. Since the 7th Divine Hall was willing to open the teleportation formations for them to come and go freely, it meant the 7th Divine Hall would not be targeting their 100 Saint City for now. They would be safe for some time at the very least. At the same time, it also demonstrated the 5th Divine Hall's determination to protect them. It gave them an understanding of the 5th Divine Hall's power from the sidelines. The 5th Divine Hall really has done it. I never thought the 5th Divine Hall could get the 7th Divine Hall to reopen the teleportation formation so quickly, Xueqi murmured, but as if she had remembered something, her joy vanished rapidly. She became stern. Though, as for the 5th Divine Hall's demands, all I can do is pass the message on and get the clan to decide on the matter. At that moment, Xueqi could no longer care about Jian Chen. She immediately took out a feather from her space ring before cutting her finger and dripping a droplet of blood on there. This was a special method of communication from the Heavenly Crane clan, merging the message to be passed on into the droplet of blood and using a feather as a carrier. It was a method no one could replicate. Send someone out immediately and take this message out to the clan. Xueqi passed the feather to the old servant and ordered. The old servant replied politely before going off to carry out the orders. At the same time, the many peak organizations in the city also received the news of the unsealed teleportation formations. After a moment of joy, they immediately began to pen messages for their people to deliver. Just in case, there were even a few organizations who wrote multiple secret messages and sent many cultivators to carry them out. Immediately, over 1,000 cultivators rushed out of the 100 Saint City. Every single one of them carried a secret message. They rushed to Dark Knight City as quickly as they could before leaving through the teleportation formations there. In the depths of the two-world mountains, a huge swirl of energy hung in the sky. This swirl of energy was the only passageway connecting the two worlds. The passageway was located in the only safe region within the two-world mountains. It was enveloped by a powerful energy, completely blocking out the thick mist and all life-devouring beasts. This place was the personal handiwork of Grand Exalts. It possessed the laws set down by Grand Exalts, which was why the peace here had never been broken across the countless years. At this moment, an ancient teleportation formation that had remained silent for a very long time suddenly lit up with dazzling light near the passageway. Cultivators emerged one after another. They observed the surroundings first. When they spotted the huge passageway in the sky, they could not help but cheer out loud. "We've crossed through the mountains successfully. This is fantastic. We can finally leave. The people of the Dark Star race can't come here. They'll be slain by the power in the space the moment they appear here, which means we're safe now. This isn't a scheme of the Dark Star race. They're really letting us return." Among the cultivators, a portion had been sent over from the 100 Saint City, while the others did not come from the 100 Saint City. They were people teleported over from other cities of the Dark Star race. After all, the several dozen peak organizations of the 100 Saint City only formed a small fraction of the outsiders active among the Dark Star race. Most of them came from other organizations of the Saints' world. They included people from weaker organizations and independent cultivators. After cheering, they rushed into the sky without the slightest hesitation, vanishing into the passageway in the end. On the other side of the passageway was one of the 5 remaining sacred lands of the Spirit's world, the Star Source continent. At this moment, in Star Source City on the Star Source continent, a series of figures floated in the air, either standing or sitting with their legs crossed. They were around a similar vortex of energy that hung in the sky. They gathered around the passageway, radiating with tremendous presences. These people were all experts who had reached Chaotic Prime, and they had made quite the progress already as Chaotic Primes. Most of them were above the 4th heavenly layer, with very few below. If any single one of them had entered the Dark Star world, they would be invincible existences who could run amok freely. Even someone as powerful as the Dark Star Emperor would not be their opponent. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2783. Inside Starsource City, the chaotic primes gathered around the passageway amounted to several dozen. They did not talk with each other, either resting with their eyes closed or staring straight at the passageway, as if they wanted to peer through the vortex of energy and directly see what was inside. Of course, there were far more chaotic primes gathered in the surroundings than these people on the surface. Divine halls hovered behind them. Every single divine hall flowed with energy and shone with dazzling light, radiating with the might of a powerful god artifact. There were several dozen divine halls, almost all at mid-grade. There were even 2 divine halls that had reached high grade among them. High-grade god artifacts were normally in the possession of grand primes. As a matter of fact, even some low-level grand primes did not possess such god artifacts. They could already be considered as great treasures in the Saints' world. Some peak clans even used a high-grade god artifact as their clan treasure. That only demonstrated the value and power of high-grade god artifacts. The chaotic primes gathered around the passageway would glance past the 2 high-grade god artifacts from time to time. Apart from the reverence and fear in their eyes, there would also be a hint of obscurity too as they tried their best to disguise their coveting, greedy emotions. Clearly, the 2 divine halls had interested many people, but no one tried to steal them. That was because the 2 high-grade god artifacts belonged to the Dire Wolf clan and the Hao family. To ensure the safety of their young master, Jin Hong, the Dire Wolf clan had even sent one of their ancestors to escort him. He resided in the Divine Hall right now. As for the Divine Hall of the Hao family, it did not contain an ancestor like the Dire Wolf clan, but there was not a single expert in the Saints' world who would ever consider taking something from the Hao family. If all the organizations scattered around the passageway right now were summoned up, there would be several hundreds of them. There were peak organizations with grand primes, as well as first-rate organizations that completely depended on their chaotic primes. They gathered there waiting for news to emerge from the Dark Star world. Some of the experts had already become worried or anxious. They had no idea what had happened in the Dark Star world, nor did they have any idea about the situation, as their connection with the Dark Star world had been completely severed already. Even when they sent more people in later, they would be trapped at the entrance due to the disabled teleportation formation, forced to return powerlessly. Many chaotic primes could sense that something was off from all this. The world of the fallen beast had a direct connection to their interests, so if anything happened in there, it would be a catastrophic loss to them and the clans and sects they represented. At this moment, the huge swirl of energy in the sky suddenly surged by a minuscule amount. It was very easy to miss. However, everyone gathered in the surroundings were chaotic primes at the very least. Their senses were so powerful that even the subtlest incident around them could not escape their senses. In that instant, the chaotic primes gathered in the surroundings all snapped their eyes open. Their gazes all gathered on the swirl of energy. Behind them, many figures of all ages and genders emerged from the levitating divine halls. Their presences were as tremendous as the ocean, extremely powerful. In the next moment, a cultivator suddenly fell out from the passageway. The eyes of the chaotic primes immediately lit up with his return, as he was not a member of the group they had sent in for investigation afterwards. This meant he had returned from among the Darkstar race, so he must have been carrying the most recent news about the Darkstar race. Behind, the powerful figures who had emerged from the divine halls all arrived near the passageway in a single step. However, just when they were about to question the cultivator who had just emerged, even more people suddenly fell out of the passageway. In that instant, an endless amount of people returned from the world of the fallen beast, falling out of the swirl like an avalanche. Very soon, the number exceeded 10,000, but there were still no signs of stopping. This sight astounded the chaotic primes, who had spent several months here waiting arduously. Just a moment ago, they were still praying that someone could return from the world of the fallen beast, so that they could learn about the exact situation among the Darkstar race. Even a single person would have sufficed. But never did they think that so many people would return all of a sudden, which made them rather flustered. However, they found their own people within the group very soon, so with a sweep of their arms, the power of their terrifying cultivation swept away their people, and they vanished from their previous locations. The return of these people came with the latest news. The organizations who had not contributed to the construction of the 100 Saint City or were unrelated to it were mostly unaffected. But the people from the peak organizations of the 100 Saint City all frowned the moment they received the news. Some of the short-tempered chaotic primes even erupted with curses. Humph, they're from a measly thumb-sized place, and they're still so arrogant. If it weren't for the fact that I can't enter, I would definitely flatten the entire Darkstar race. What? The Darkstar race has actually killed so many descendants of our clan? How dare they? How dare they? They're a tiny race, Yet they actually want to offend our star clan. The Dark Star race has gone too far. That so-called 7th Divine Hall deserves to die. And that 5th Divine Hall, they've actually put forward such a rude request. Do they really think they're a big deal? Aren't they afraid I'll kill them all the moment they come out in the future? The items that the Dark Star race require have reached the God tier. We have plenty of pills and heavenly resources at that level in our clan, and we can even offer quite a lot to them. It's just that none of these items can be brought in. The passageway is limited by the laws of the Grand Exalts. Not a single item that exceeds the limit can be brought in. The 5th Divine Hall really has given us quite the problem to solve. My clan cannot afford to lose our foundation in the Dark Star race, or it'll be a great loss for us. This clearly isn't something we can resolve. It's best if we report this to our ancestors. The chaotic primes spoke one after another. Apart from their fury, they felt extremely powerless too. In the end, they all transmitted the news back to their clans for their ancestors to decide on the matter. Even the Grand Prime ancestor of the Dire Wolf clan present expressed, "My Dire Wolf clan does possess what the 5th Divine Hall requires, but we can't bring it in either. It's fine if my clan gives up on our business in the Dark Star race as long as our young master can return safely." On the ice pole plain within the Heavenly Crane clan, their ancestors bathed in a pure white light, obscuring their appearance. They answered, "Contact the clansmen among the Dark Star race and let them know that the clan cannot fulfill the 5th Divine Hall's request. At the same time, have them do whatever they can to gather the required items during this period of time." After saying that, the ancestor let out a deep sigh. The source water of ways only forms where Grand Exalts have fallen after a series of natural reactions. Without the source water of ways, we won't be able to use some of the functions among the holy grounds of our Heavenly Crane clan to nurture our juniors. That'll be quite the loss to the clan. And the soil of divine blood too. So far, we've only discovered it in the Dark Star world. It's an important material for refining the ancestral blood pill. Without it, the effects of the ancestral blood pill will decrease by as much as 30%. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2784. Creating a new pill at the same time. In a beautifully decorated hall within the Heavenly Crane clan, a ruddy old man radiating with the bearing of an immortal sat on a bed of freezing ice jade. The ice jade bed was clearly extremely cold. The coldness it radiated with made the entire hall seem like a cavern of ice, and it would constantly emit an icy mist-like aura, wrapping around the old man. It only made the old man seem even more sagely. The old man was the first great elder of the Heavenly Crane clan, a 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime. He possessed so much influence that his authority only paled in comparison to the ancestor. Currently, the old man clutched a pure white feather in thought. He murmured, "That's strange. That girl Qianqian is currently in the world of the fallen beast. So why has she suddenly sent someone to ask me about this? This isn't something a mere god king like her should know. But since the girl has specially sent someone back to the clan from the world of the fallen beast for this information, it means she requires it. I don't know why she would need it, but it definitely serves some purpose. So be it, so be it. It's not like it's an absolute secret anyway. If she wants to know, then I'll let her know." Although the Hinyu Plains ranking had fallen drastically among the 49 plains of the Saints' world with the destruction of the Neptunian Divine Palace a few million years ago, there were still over a dozen peak organizations on the plain. The Jade Pill sect happened to rank second among these peak organizations. This ranking made the Jade Pill sect renowned on the Hinyu Plain. Currently, several chaotic prime great elders gathered together in the Jade Pill sect that wafted with the heavy fragrance of pills. Every single one of them frowned as they discussed among themselves. Their faces were all warped. That'll be difficult, that'll be difficult. The passageway leading to the world of the fallen beast was personally created by Grand Exalts. We possess exceptional mastery over the way of alchemy, and we can create new pills formulas with a flick of the hand. We can even mask countless weaker god tier pills into regular pills with great ease. But something like that can only fool some weaker Grand Primes at most. It's nothing more than a futile effort before the laws set down by Grand Exalts. Then what are we supposed to do? It's not like you don't know about the batch of 12 cycle pills of life and death the heaven-splitting clan of the Nine Clouds Plane and the heaven sect of planet Kangmang ordered from our Jade Pill sect. High-level god-tier pills like pills of life and death have never been easy to refine. Even if you ignore the low success rate, we even need to push its effects to the peak, to the 12th cycle. Only by adding some water of life from the dark star race do we have a chance at refining pills of life and death of the 12th cycle. If we lose our business in the dark star world, it'll be difficult to collect water of life. Yeah. Without the water of life, we won't be able to refine 12th cycle pills of life and death, and we won't be able to complete our deal with the Heaven-splitting clan and the Heaven sect. According to the deal, our Jade Pill sect will have to compensate them on fold. That'll be a huge loss. It's not just the 12th cycle pills of life and death. Many high-level god-tier pills we refine require materials from the dark star world. After all, the two-world mountains was personally created by the Grand Exalt of the wood spirits. Even a blade of grass from there contains extremely high levels of life force. As a matter of fact, some of the heavenly resources even possess some shattered laws of life, which makes them the perfect material for refining various pills. Not only can they increase the success rate, but they can strengthen the effects of the pills too. This has too great of an impact on our Jade Pill sect. This is beyond our abilities. Let's report it to the ancestor. Even if we have to pay quite the price, we have to protect our business in the Dark Star world. Very soon, the two Grand Prime ancestors in the Jade Pill sect received the news, and they immediately emerged from secluded cultivation. After gaining a detailed understanding, they both fell silent. A while later, one of the ancestors said, "We have to protect our business in the Dark Star world no matter what. If we lose the Dark Star world, then we can only rely on other organizations to collect these precious items for us. But with that, our Jade Pill sect will become bound to others. And they'll definitely take advantage of this to extort us greedily. Go and invite the Azure Ink Grandmaster of the Pill King clan, the Pill-worshipping Venerable of the Pill Nurturing clan, and the Soul Pill Ancestor of the Ancient Pill sect. At the same time, contact the upper echelon of the Empyrean Demon cult. Our Jade Pill sect is willing to offer a good price for 10,000 pure souls. They just have to be at peak God King. We will create a new pill." The news from the 100 Saints city directly alarmed several dozen peak organizations in the Saints world. The ancestors of many organizations even asked about this matter personally, as they required many of the resources that the Dark Star world produced. As a matter of fact, some special resources were necessities to certain peak clans. Some of these resources just happened to be irreplaceable, and the only place that produced them was the Dark Star world. As a result, the various peak organizations all attached great importance to this matter. But in the end, the majority of the peak organizations were powerless against the Fifth Divine Hall's demands, or they were able to fulfill the demands, but the price was just too great, so great that it had exceeded the value that the Dark Star race could bring for them. Consequently, only a handful of organizations came up with plans in the end, and they carried them out fervently. Of course, only the peak organizations from the 100 Saints city were distressed. All the other clans and organizations who had not joined the 100 Saints city were completely unaffected. In contrast, these organizations even sent in groups of people eagerly, wave after wave, carrying tremendous amounts of divine crystals and various resources. This was because the Dark Star race had announced they required large quantities of divine crystals, tremendous quantities of divine crystals. In exchange, they were willing to offer some precious items. Just as the peak organizations were being riled up by the Fifth Divine Hall's demands, the person behind it all, Jian Chen, was receiving guests at the entrance of the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. He received representatives of the various organizations who had come to attend the banquet. The banquet was arranged with Jin Hong and He Chanqian in charge and the combined efforts of over a dozen organizations. They invited everyone to celebrate Jian Chen's safe return. Obviously, not everyone in the 100 Saints city came to this banquet. Only 2/3 of the organizations actually attended. Among the 2/3, over half of them had just sent some attendants or envoys to participate as a courtesy, giving Jian Chen words of congratulations. Not a lot of people who held actual importance attended. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2785, The Hao family of the Prosper Plain, the young sect master of the Empire Lotus Sword sect, Ping Yixing, has arrived. The young miss of the Hyman clan, Man Yunjun, has arrived. The young master of the 100 Battle Clan, Bai Zhanxiong, has arrived. The direct disciple of the Heaven Sect, Mo Shang, has arrived. At the entrance of the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall, the servants for receiving the guests called out again and again. The representatives of the many peak organizations stepped into the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. Jian Chen received everyone inside. Even though he knew these people all represented dominant, peak organizations in the Saints' world, he had no idea which organizations were stronger or weaker. He Qian gave a detailed introduction regarding their exact influence and power secretly, as if she was afraid Jian Chen would mistreat them. Yang Yutian, you have to handle these people carefully. You can't afford to offend them, because there was some existences among them that even our Heavenly Crane clan fears. In particular, this person called Mo Shang comes from the Heaven Sect, the #1 organization on planet Kangmang of one of the 81 major planets of the Saints' world, because one of their ancestors is a peak 6th heavenly layer Grand Prime, as well as the Lord of planet Kangmang. He is someone who possesses terrifying influence. And I've heard a great elder in my clan mention that their strongest ancestor, the Planet Lord, has already tried breaking through to higher levels. Once this ancestor actually makes it to the 7th heavenly layer, the Heaven Sect status will climb by quite a bit in the entire Saints' world. When he heard about the Heaven Sect, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. He immediately recalled the person called Zhang Yun, who called himself a great elder of the Heaven Sect he had met outside. And he had heard from Zhang Yun that the Heaven Sect had rather close ties with the Myriad Bone Guild. But clearly, the Heaven Sect was extremely fearful of the Myriad Bone Guild's heartless child. Young masters Hao Ran and Hao Chen of the Hao family have arrived. At this moment, the receiving servant's voice rang out again. As soon as she heard the Hao family, He Qianqian's expression changed slightly. She was surprised. The Hao family's actually come too, and they've sent the 2 young masters, Hao Ran and Hao Chen. Yang Yutian. Listen closely. If you could afford to offend over 90% of the peak organizations in the 100 Saint City, then the Hao family would be one of the few you can't offend. And the people who've come from the Hao family this time aren't people who bear no influence either. Instead, they're direct descendants of the Hao family. They possess quite the status in the Hao family. Is the Hao family even stronger than the Heaven Sect of planet Kangmang? Alright, I've heard that the Hao family seems to come from the Prosper Plane. The Prosper Plane is also one of the 7 sacred planes of the Saints' world, Jian Chen asked secretly. He was not unfamiliar with Hao Ran and Hao Chen. When he had first emerged from the 2 world mountains, he had once saved them under the identity of Xueqi, helping them avert a crisis. Otherwise, he really had no idea whether the 2 of them would still be alive. While the battle prowess of these 2 people were slightly worse compared to He Qianqian, Ping Yixing and the others, their statuses were clearly much higher. Just as he asked He Qianqian, Jian Chen had gone up to receive them enthusiastically. He engaged in some small chit-chat with them, before inviting Hao Ran and Hao Cheng into the hall. Fellow Yang Yutian, I've already heard about everything that's happened in the 2 world mountains from Zi Xiaoji. It was all thanks to the existence of a powerful expert like fellow Yang Yutian that everyone could emerge from the 2 world mountains smoothly. Otherwise, even if they emerged in one piece, they still would have suffered horrific losses, and they probably wouldn't have possessed enough power to take back the 100 Saint City. Hao Ran and Hao Chen was amiable. They did not put on airs as they smiled gently. Jian Chen recognized them, but they failed to recognize Jian Chen as Xueqi who had once saved them in the 2 world mountains. At this moment, He Qianqian's stern voice rang out in Jian Chen's head. Compared to the Heaven Sect of planet Kangmang, the Hao family is indeed much stronger. Even on the Prosper Plane littered with experts, the Hao family is a super organization that no one dares to provoke. This is all because the Hao family produced an extremely powerful ancestor. People revere him as the Yen ancestor. It's exactly because the existence of this Yen ancestor that the Hao family has become such an untouchable organization. That's because not only is the Yen ancestor a 7th heavenly layer Grand Prime, he's also the commander of the divine generals in the heavenly palace of Bishing. He possesses extremely great status within the heavenly palace of Bishing, enough for him to speak directly with the First Majesty. How can you call the Hao family weak if they possess such a connection? Admiration filled He Qianqian's eyes. Even without exceptional personal strength, a powerful background was enough to garner respect no matter where they went. After learning that, Jian Chen could not help but glance at Hao Ran and Hao Chen again. He immediately became more attached to them. With his connection to Ming Dong, the Hao family was not exactly outsiders to him. Apart from the Hao family, There's the Heavenly Lightning Clan that you can't afford to offend either. Although the strength of the Heavenly Lightning Clan is similar to our Heavenly Crane Clan at most, or even slightly worse, they also possess a great background. I've heard the Great Elder mention that behind the Heavenly Lightning Clan is one of the 8 Archean clans, the Lightning God Clan. He's warned us sternly to never provoke them. Xueqi was solemn. None of what she told him was a secret among the peak organizations. It was basically public information, so there was nothing taboo about it. It was just that regular cultivators could never come in contact with something like that. Jian Chen was shocked when he reached there. He obviously knew about Archean clans. Even across the entire Saints world, there were only 8 clans like that, and every single one of them had existed for eons. They possessed extremely terrifying strength. That was because clans like that had once birthed Grand Exalts, except the clans survived after the deaths of the Grand Exalts. They still inherited the many supreme secret techniques left behind by the Grand Exalts and the supreme god artifacts used by Grand Exalts. Apart from that, Archean clans even possessed 9th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. Only by fulfilling these conditions could they be known as Archean clans. Without any exaggeration at all, there was nothing that could strike fear into Archean clans across the entire Saints world apart from figures of supremacy like Grand Exalts. Even the Heaven-Splitting clan that also possessed a 9th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime, the Heaven-Splitting Ancestor, paled in comparison to Archean clans, because their heritages were on completely different levels. The Heavenly Lightning Clan. The Lightning God Clan. Jian Chen memorized the 2 names. Now he already knew about 2 of the 8 Archean clans that currently existed in the Saints world, which were the Dao Clan and the Lightning God Clan. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2786. Asking for the pill formula. The reason why Xueqi had given such a detailed introduction about the Hao family and the Heavenly Lightning Clan to Jian Chen was because they possessed terrifyingly great backgrounds. One had the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, while the other had an Archean clan. However, only the Hao family sent people to attend this banquet among the 2 organizations. The Heavenly Lightning Clan was not present. Of course, aside from these 2 organizations, there were other powerful organizations that the Heavenly Crane Clan feared within the 100 Saint City, but they just paled in comparison to the Hao family and the Heavenly Lightning Clan. Xueqi only warned Jian Chen about them and did not give him an overly detailed introduction. Very soon, the banquet formally began in the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall. As the main star, he was fated to be the most busy today. After giving a speech at the beginning, he walked around with a wine cup with a smile on his face, modestly toasting the people from the various organizations. It did not matter whether these people present today were leaders of an organization or mere envoys or servants. They were guests. As long as they could make it today, it was a form of recognition, so Jian Chen obviously would handle them with courtesy. As he did that, many organizations secretly or openly extended a recruiting hand towards Jian Chen, offering him numerous, lavish conditions and many benefits for him to join their clans. In short, the offers he had received were so great that they could interest any God King independent cultivator, or even drive them crazy. They were even enough to tempt experts who had just broken through to the primordial realm to a certain degree. Unfortunately, Jian Chen was not a God King, but a primordial realm expert, and not any regular primordial realm expert, but a figure who was so wealthy that he could tempt Grand Primes. As a result, the offers from these organizations obviously did not pique his interest. He turned them all down with the excuse that he did not want to be tied down. The reason why these organizations were willing to attend this banquet for his sake was mainly because they wanted to rope Jian Chen in. All of them were well prepared. Seeing how their resources were unable to tempt Jian Chen, they all made a signal by glancing. Immediately, many women who had attended the banquet with them stood up. Every single one of them were great beauties who were chosen after careful selection. Both their appearances and figures were the best of the best. With an enchanting smile, they all approached Jian Chen, conversing with Jian Chen gently. Some of these women even tried to accidentally brush past Jian Chen, with their eyes filled with admiration and in a trance. But what hadn't Jian Chen been through already? He remained utterly unfazed from something like this. He seemed composed, shifting his feet gently and avoiding them easily. Jin Hong and He Chanqian took note of this nearby. Jin Hong remained the same as before, but He Qianqian smiled in interest. She said gently, I never thought Yang Yuqian would be more warmly received than I imagined. He's earned the favor of so many large organizations, and they're even trying to seduce him with women now. Some of these women are people who are well versed in techniques of enchantment. They're no good in battle, but they're almost unmatched when it comes to seducing men. I wonder if Yang Yuqian can control himself. Don't worry, Yang Yuqian is anything but ordinary. These techniques are all going to be useless against Yang Yuqian. Jin Hong remained indifferent. He held the leg of a beast in his hand, wolfing it down. With each bite, dense life force would ooze out. The leg of an unknown beast clearly originated from the life-devouring beasts of the Two-World Mountains. He Qianqian looked at Jin Hong and said seriously, Young Master Jin Hong, you've assisted Yang Yuqian time and time again. I don't think it's completely out of gratitude for what he did in the Two-World Mountains, is it? You're also interested in roping in Yang Yuqian, right? Jin Hong only replied after careful consideration, I really haven't considered roping in Yang Yuqian before, because I don't see how my clan is suitable for him. Though, in my opinion, your Heavenly Crane clan has a very good chance. Oh, tell me about it? Just what is our Heavenly Crane clan supposed to offer to entice a prodigy like Yang Yuqian into joining? If Yang Yuqian really joins my clan, it'll be quite the deed, He Qianqian said. There were no organizations in the Saints' world which would give up on monstrously talented geniuses. Organizations could fight over someone like Yang Yuqian. Jin Hong gazed at He Qianqian deeply and said, First come, first served. Yang Yuqian's technically a part of your Heavenly Crane clan right now, so how difficult can it be to rope him in? If you personally tried to capture Yang Yuqian's heart, you really have quite a high chance. He Qianqian was clearly taken aback, which she then smiled bitterly. Young Master Jin Hong, I'm different from you. You're already the young patriarch in your clan. You possess an extremely special status, where even your grand prime ancestor takes special care of you. As for me, I'm just a slightly talented clansman of the Heavenly Crane clan. My talent is nowhere close to yours, much less my status. The fate and marriage of a clansman like me is destined to be arranged by my seniors in the clan. Even if I get married, my husband will definitely be a member of a large organization with a great background. Yang Yuqian and I are people of two different worlds. The banquet ended and the guests dispersed. Very soon, the Heavenly Crane Divine Hall recovered its usual peace. He Qianqian arrived before Jian Chen and seemed to smile at him. There were so many alluring beauties in the banquet. Has none of them caught your eye? Jian Chen remained calm. He said seriously, In my mind, there are only two thoughts, cultivation and becoming stronger. There is no room for the affairs of love. And, as an independent cultivator, I have gone through much more and experienced much more than people like you, born into those large clans. The affairs of love no longer hold much significance to me at all. He Qianqian studied Jian Chen with a strange expression. People have 7 emotions and 6 desires. Even some old monsters who have cultivated for millions or even tens of millions of years are unable to let go of them, still bewitched by them, enough to go crazy for them. You're not even 1,000 years old and you say you've already detached yourself from the desire of love. Is that a flaw in your personality? Or your talent? Jian Chen did not want to dwell on this topic anymore, so he changed the conversation. Basically all of these organizations possess 100 Tribulations God King pills. Surely the formula for the pill isn't particularly precious, right? He Qianqian's eyes flashed from that. She replied with a question. Don't tell me you're interested in the formula for refining 100 Tribulations God King pills? That's right. I'm very interested in the pill. How can I get my hands on the pill formula? Jian Chen asked. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.